Hello, everyone. I'm joined today with Raymond Wallman, the filmmaker of the Airplay Documentary. If you recall, a few months ago, we did a watch party where we watched Airplay Part 1. It was myself, Raymond, Soyadl. I'm sorry, you actually gave me a different name to use.
It's all right. Yeah, that is my Twitch handle, but I'm not really promoting my Twitch, so no problem. But yeah,
KarlThePagan.
yeah.
Okay, KarlThePagan. And also there was Miss Sonata and Porcelain Chips. We have invited Miss Sonata and Porcelain Chips to join us, though looks like they probably won't be able to make it. That was a watch party for part one where we discussed the film. We will not be watching part two. We've already watched it together on our own time and are now just coming together to have a discussion. I think probably won't go super late, but there's some stuff to talk about regarding part two of the film, and I'm glad that you're both here with me to discuss this.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so I guess I'll ask you a couple questions up front, and then Karl, if you want to ask questions too, you can with the filmmaker, since we have your undivided attention, Raymond. Part one, you focus heavily on games journalism, the games journalism aspect of GamerGate. Very straightforward. People on both sides have said that your documentary part one was very fair, very factual. They liked it. It seemed they didn't have too many complaints about part one. Now part two, I don't know how many anti-Gamergate people paid the $10, but it focuses more on other aspects, the PM panel at Airplay, you could say. What the fuck is this non-gaming journalism stuff? Is that right?
Yeah. For part one, I wanted to focus mainly on the topic concerning gaming ethics and gaming journalism. And sorry, it's a screensaver on my TV. Okay. For the second part, I wanted to examine more of the cultural aspects, any of the cultural aspects that went into Gamergate, and also have blossomed since Gamergate.
Okay.
Look,
Okay.
things such as the concept of social justice warriors, intersectionality, safe spaces, university campuses, and many of the other things you can see. If you watch it, you see that that the 2016 election is a big part of it, and Trump and the media coverage of that. How there was many think pieces that trying to connect Gamergate with the Trump campaign, whatnot, and still people trying to connect Gamergate with the Trump campaign because of the Steve Bannon connection with Breitbart and Milo Yiannopoulos. And so trying to separate all the different strands of information there.
Okay. So, Karl, anything you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I guess the sort of the question is when do you get to, set up a fence around sort of these people and their participation and say that, okay, when Milo was saying these things on Twitter, he was a gamergater, and then, you know, months or years later he was not.
Well, I mean, like, I don't know how you want to talk about. I mean, I think that most people, pretty much everyone, I think, um, separates like between like I hold like a wide variety of views on a wide variety of issues. Some of them are Gamergate views, and some of them aren't. Like Milo obviously talked about Gamergate quite a bit in 2014, 2015. Then he stopped talking about it altogether, pretty much, and went kind of psycho and lost his his mind with the whole pedo stuff, and kind of went down the toilet.
Which is covered in the film.
Yeah. a PDF file stuff, I should say. I'm not sure how YouTube. I'm not monetized yet. Doesn't really matter. But with the PDF file stuff and him like going more crazy over time, I don't think you can be like 50 years from now, when Milo's on his deathbed, be like, Gamer Gator Milo Yiannopoulos. I want to remember you as this one thing, and that's what you are forever, and that's all of your views are Gamergate. Like I don't think that that's really. I mean, that's not
That
what you're
is
saying, right? But that's kind of weird. I wouldn't say that like everything that Milo does throughout his whole life is a Gamergate action, right?
that
No,
is assuming that the legacy press that covered that have been covering Milo for the past decade are still in place and are still in place when he goes, and I see that not being a possibility.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
the perspective on and not just Milo, but we can talk about Mike Cernovich, who was no one before he became the based moon lawyer of Gamergate. I've got in my notes maybe a few others, but really to not focus too much on individuals, it exists within a social movement. It exists within, the in fact, this is my perspective. I had a lot of connection with Penny Arcade Expo and Penny Arcade, and they had their own social reforms internally to the volunteers. They had the whole Dick Wolves controversy. And so all of this is part of that same social movement. Is Gamergate a part of that, or is that a part of Gamergate as well? Is this all a thread of the same social movement? I guess I can accept at least one thing. Gamergate was over when Trump was elected president. And that's more the function of this is a singularity, a political singularity. What the fuck just happened? Everything resets kind of at least in my brain, everything kind of reset like, well, this is like I knew things were not going in the right direction, but this is really weird. So I'm
Really? So
not
okay.
yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead.
Well, I don't think that my research has shown that Gamergate was over when Trump got elected.
Okay.
Not at all, actually. I mean, I think that the historical record shows that there was significant Gamergate action throughout
Mhm.
most of 2017, and there was some stuff in 2018 too, but it was not as big.
Well, I guess then the question is, if Gamergate achieved its goals, as you said, wasn't it over when it did that? And wouldn't that have happened by 2015 when the FTC and the SEC finished their rulemaking updates?
Well,
Or
that's
were
not
there
what.
other goals? Where were the other wins after that?
Well, that's not what I said. That's what James Desborough said in his book that is quoted
Mm-hmm.
in the documentary.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar
Which, yeah,
with the scene because my head was somewhere else at that time.
well, Raymond, I was actually this on the list of things I wanted to talk about. Um, Let me see if it's where it's at exactly. This was James Desborough's writing, I believe, but you included it in the documentary. You said, "quote There is little doubt that GamerGate was an incredibly effective protest, continually confounding expectations that it would die or falter. It accomplished many of its goals and managed to do a lot of damage to its enemies." And then it cuts to Gawker. Gawker
Yeah,
getting
that
destroyed.
was. Yeah, I was just watching the documentary and just going over that part, and that was the part where I just had to pause at. And yeah, Gawker was one of its main arch rivals, and as a result of Gamergate, this was even admitted by not Max Temkin, I believe it was Max Reed, who was one of the editors of Gawker who resigned in his I guess post-mortem on Gawker. Did I kill Gawker? He cited Gamergate as one of the top three I guess, symptoms that led to Gawker's demise. And he said that among all of our different opponents, none were more effective than the GamerGaters. That's that's mentioned in the film, and from what I understand at least, Gawker was the primary target of Gamergate. And there were ancillary enemies, ancillary goals, but that was mainly its singular goal, was to enforce or find a way to enforce better ethical norms in games journalism, and to hurt Gawker in a permanent way. And that succeeded. Gawker is now dead. It tried to revive itself, and that was a abject failure. And many of the journalists and many of the outlets that condemned Gamergate at the time are either dead, dying, or on life support. But I think we can attribute that mainly to the greater trends in online news, online discourse, that these journalistic outlets, magazines and publications, whatnot, are just being proven to be just financially unsuccessful, just not very good at what they set out to do, and people are ignoring them.
Okay. So I guess the next question about scope in my mind is, so if you sort of accept that, yeah, this was more than specific journalistic reforms, and then it was more about the taking down those, those standards bearers for old games media. Is Gamergate responsible for any of the fallout that followed that? Is Gamergate sort of, if killing Gawker media was one of the goals, then what's the result? Is, like, can you actually divorce Gamergate from Trump? Because Gawker media falling kind of fell into that whole election year media cycle, and the whole seismic event.
Well, I can give you.
Affect...
Go ahead. So I thought you finish your, and then I'll answer. I want to give Raymond a quick chance to answer too, but I don't think that the whole Trump connection is really good. I was actually talking with one of the crazy. I mean, I guess I can call him that. I think he's really lost his way, but whatever. He's a Trump guy. Mark Salmonfink. You can watch my interview with him. And he even admits that he lost his mind in part because of the Gamergate stuff. And even he, who is like super immersed into like Trump world politics, because he's a big MAGA guy now, even he's like, I think that it's probably only like 15% of the Gamergate people are Trump fans. 15 to 20, he said. And I said I said I'd probably put it like between 10 to 20. Maybe 10 to 20% of the Gamergate people are Trump fans, are big Trump fans, and voted for him and still support him or anything like that. I don't think it's some significant portion. If you look at like Trump's support within the Republican Party as a whole, or even just the electorate and the American public as a whole, I don't think that there's any reason to think that I think Gamergaters are actually probably underrepresented among Trump supporters.
And just a little bit of a check here. Does that mean that 80 to 90% of Gamergaters voted for Hillary Clinton?
I think the exact wording we used was big Trump fan in terms
Right.
of who's a fan of Trump, in at least today. Now, if you, I'm sure there might have been a higher number of people, maybe. I don't know exactly how much, but some higher number of people who like aren't fans of Trump, but were like voted conservative their entire lives, and they're like, well, I'll pull the lever reluctantly for Donald. There might have been some people like that, though. GamerGate never really had a huge number of conservatives in it to begin with. They definitely existed, but it wasn't like a huge amount. And we have research
I,
from Brad Glasgow and other um, sources on that.
I can tell you I pulled the lever for Hillary Clinton very reluctantly. I acknowledge that she's pure evil, but
And how many how many GamerGaters are crossing over to Bernie or so-called Bernie Bros, and was that narrative at all similar? Like the Bernie Bro narrative, is that something that is sort of downwind of GamerGate?
There
well,
were
I think
good.
yeah, well, I think that well, I don't have any numbers, but I'm sure that a substantive portion of Gamergate were supported Bernie. I'm sure that there was a substantive number that supported Trump, and I'm sure that there was a substantive number who supported Hillary Clinton, maybe reluctantly, maybe not, and that it's an entire population of people that you don't have, the numbers for.
Yeah, I'm sort of connecting the causal dots. The it is the rhetoric involved in that 2016 political season, where the Bernie Bros, meaning you're sexist if you don't vote for Hillary, you're in the basket of deplorables, all of that stuff, and I can see very easily the culture portion of Gamergate migrating in that direction. And I don't know more than a couple individual people who I would say yes, they definitely did. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm honestly, I can see that maybe it is possible, and maybe from a big media perspective, it would be possible to wag the dog this way. But I don't know if that tracks as much as my instincts are telling me it might have.
So, do you
Well,
want to lay out real quick for us, very like
Hmm.
as specific as you can get, what your hypothesis is regarding the GamerGate people, the Bernie people, and the Trump people?
Right.
well, I
So
yeah.
we've got the Keck Army thing, especially, and that was great, except for maybe there's one thing you need to edit out of the Keck anthem in part 2. We'll talk offline about that. But this the movement, the meme magic, Palmer Luckey meme magic movement, sort of shifted politics a lot more than the conventional wisdom thought that it might. And there was a moment in the Clinton campaign when she basically made the statement, the basket of deplorables statement, where, oh, if you're Trump has all these supporters, these basket of deplorables, and it's all sexist, misogynistic, racist, homophobic, etc. And this is easy to like copy paste the ethics in games journalism talking points and say, okay, this cultural attack on gamers, men, etc., it's the same here in politics. It's an attack on men who are supporting Bernie Sanders. And this is the hypothesis, is that these like political talking points are so eerily similar that I want to know from your perspective, were you engaged in the topic still? And was it overriding, or did you hear about the basket of deplorables and think they were talking about gamers or you specifically or anything like that?
I think that so. I think that I understand why you're saying this. It's not really like a GamerGate thing specifically. I understand why you say this, and even Raymond, I think, kind of alludes to this, and it's the same position. I don't know if it's the same position. We might disagree, Raymond, but I think what happened is that a segment of the left completely lost their minds and became extremely regressive, illiberal. They abandoned the liberal values. And they started advocating for censorship and bullying people online and engaging in all sorts of terrible behavior. They don't believe in equality anymore. They don't believe in a whole bunch of other things, right? So there's a problem on the left, and the people in GamerGate, they ended up encountering these people on the left who were really bad, and they stood up to them and were like, "Hey, whoa, what the fuck? We just want to play games. We want ethical games journalism. We want artistic freedom for game developers. What the fuck's going on?"
Yeah.
And
Well, I
then,
think
but like that element of the left, like it existed in other parts of society too, and people were starting to recognize that. And I think that part of it, part of the reason Trump won, is because of the backlash to this craziness on the left. Now
yeah.
Trump also brought a lot of craziness of his own with his presidency and refusal to leave office and all this stuff. That's a major problem. But it was, I think, in part at least, I don't know about large part, in part, the Trump thing was a response to the craziness on the left. So Trump was sort of responding to, in some way, the same thing that GamerGate was responding to, but he responded to it in a different area.
Well, yeah. I think put you can just tie Gamergate not just not into the Trump campaign, but both the Trump campaign and Gamergate in this wider phenomenon of loss of trust in major institutions, the media being especially one. That's why I have, if you watch the movie, I begin and end the movie on Jon Stewart just after and the first one is an interview he did in 2006 with Christina Hoff Sommers, and the other one is just after the 2016 election, 10 years later, where he's on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he's responding to, and it's just after the 2016 election, and he's delivering a message to the media saying, you thought you met your match, a blabbermouth who's as thin-skinned and narcissistic as you are. Maybe you should take up a hobby. I recommend journalism. And it's just how the press, how the journalistic media, and have all kind of walled themselves off from the general public, and the left as well, because most journalists are liberal who graduate from very liberal colleges on the East and West coasts. So they come from that environment, who have just walled themselves off from the general public and dismiss anything that, anything that the masses regard as deplorable or fascistic or whatever, that they just don't have any sympathy for that portion of the country.
Yeah, and I appreciate sort of this new media versus old media comparison. I know that part one deals with the journo list. It might be a really good touch point to refer back to journalist in part two, but of course, hopefully, people who watch part two have already watched part one, and it is a discussion that I guess we haven't really had, is what is what is journalism now? What is the fourth estate, the so-called fourth estate? Is it dead? Is it still exist in these paywalled New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes articles? Does it still exist in, the influencer media, or is it in YouTube, on Twitch? Is it in rooms like this where we're not the fifth estate, we're the new fourth estate? And that's really something that I found inspiring. It got my mind thinking in that direction. And so I want to thank you for that. And there's a couple other wins, but yeah, we can go to the next point if Tachyon has one.
Yeah. Let me just say there's a great book by Matt Taibbi which goes into all this, called Hate Incorporated, how the media and it's all about how the media has lost all of its previous normal venues for profit, and now the only way that they can remain profitable is to get people to hate each other, to just further drive these partisan narratives. And it's having a devastating effect on the country. You can tell that he wrote that book just as he was leaving Rolling Stone, and just as the Trump campaign and Russiagate was just starting to take off. And in there he compares Russiagate to this generation's WMDs. It was that big of a journalistic failure. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the Mike Cernovich, I think you said.
Right.
It's interesting because it's like weird because like nobody who's pro GamerGate knows who he is. That's probably not exactly true, but like the anti-GamerGate, because he became this like weird grifter guy over time, and like the scammer guy or whatever. Because of that, like the anti-GamerGate people always want to bring him up. It's like, well, he was like a big guy in GamerGate, but the people who were in GamerGate, Raymond, you didn't include him in your documentary at all. You said, and I didn't see him in there.
I didn't
I
include him because I didn't find anything worth including.
Yeah, he didn't actually do any single thing in GamerGate, and he only talked about it for a few weeks. It looks like on
Yeah.
Twitter. So I didn't consider him all that relevant to the story either. Now, to be fair, there was one person I did talk with who said maybe it'd be worth reaching out to see if he'd want to do an interview. But I don't think anybody considered him to be like a major player.
It really depends on your perspective. Because I was personally connected to one or more people on the target list. I think that I considered his intense participation on Twitter, and his sort of like legalistic threats and all that kind of stuff was particularly motivating for the anti-Gamergate people. And so like you spend some time talking about more than just Quinn and Brianna Wu in part 2, and a number of people who are in essence responding to these threats, the doxing, and all sorts of there's all sorts of finger pointing that can be done, but in essence anything that they've done is a response to actions of key figures like Adam Baldwin, Mike Cernovich, Internet Aristocrat, Total Biscuit, and all the other influencers who furthered these stories. So
Well,
that's why I bring him in.
You mean what? Like they talked about it? I mean, because I think making videos about it, articles, criticizing the stuff that was happening in games journalism, I think that's 100% legit. I think criticizing the gatekeeping mentality and the illiberalism that the games journalists and the social justice warriors or whatever, I think that's all legit too. I think that's all like within the realm of free speech and discussion.
But you have responsibility with your speech, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, like you have a responsibility to be ethical.
Okay.
You have a responsibility not to like lie about people and make stuff up. And right, yeah, sure.
And you can be sure to corral your audience and discourage them from harassment and stuff like that. And that's something that, you've rightly said that the anti-Gamergate people need to do or needed to do better. And I can't say that you're wrong. So I think that this is
What,
sort
did
of
I
a
say
shared
that?
responsibility. When we were in the not your shield moment, and we were talking about the harassment on both sides moments
Oh, maybe
that
I
I'm
did
sure
say.
happened.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't. I think that obviously, if you're making like YouTube videos saying like, "Go dox this person, go harass this person," I think that that's wrong. I don't like know how much responsibility an individual content creator has for like if one of their fans sends out like some mean tweets or even sends out like a death threat on Twitter. Um, like if one of my fans was like doxing somebody, I would ban them from the Discord and stuff. I wouldn't allow
Hmm.
that. It even says in the rules.
Yeah,
But like
and that's a
outside of
good
that,
standard.
like I don't like
Yeah,
what am I, if you're a huge content creator like Total Biscuit, right? Like millions of followers probably, right? I mean, he was huge. And like one of his people, um, gets drunk or is some 12-year-old kid who wants to fuck around. I don't know how much responsibility Total Biscuit personally has for that, unless he's like
I
endorsing it.
I think that it's something that we've discovered, and you've discovered the appropriate response is to have a standing policy that discourages that. And maybe it was just not on the top of our minds around 2014. We sort of had the internet will do what it wants attitude a decade ago, and we've kind of changed because we're more atomized communities. We're more responsible for the people that follow us, and we can put our foot down and say some actions are not acceptable. Like the 4chan not your personal army rule is that, but even more strictly enforced.
Well, you say that we've changed on this. I'm not sure we have that really that much because like Destiny might be one of like the few streamers who has like a rule like that. Like Destiny, I guess I have a rule like that. A couple other people do too, where like we'll ban people for off-site doxing or sending death threats, right? Um, but like outside of like Destiny's sphere, like I'm not sure like Vosh has those rules. I'm not sure that like Hassan has those rules.
I I'm
Maybe they do.
pretty
I
well.
don't know
Okay,
if they.
I
But I know that like some of them, not those two particular individuals, but like the corn guy. And I'm not like I'm
Jake.
yeah. Apparently, he got into a huge thing with Destiny where one of his moderators was sending some spicy takes, from my understanding. I haven't looked into the whole situation too much, but apparently he got in trouble for that. And he was
Mhm.
like, "Oh no, yeah, I demodded that person and kicked them out like months ago," and it turns out he didn't, and it was this whole controversy at the time where it's like it doesn't. I mean, it's also the internet. I feel like the streamer world has tons of people who shit on each other and whose fans rate each other's chats and stuff all the time. I feel like that's pretty common. Am I wrong?
Uh, well, it's behavior. The behavior is common. I just looked it up. It's rule number 2 on Vosh's server. I'm looking for that. Okay, there it is. Number 9, no brigading
Okay.
other servers or communities is number 9 rule at
Well,
Hassan Abi's
okay.
Discord.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
Do
it's
they do
it's
they actually
it's
enforce like if one of his random followers though like sent a death threat to somebody, would he actually ban them? I don't know.
yeah, that's a good question. I mean, do we see this kind of loosely enforced on Reddit? We see it loosely enforced, but it is considered, I think, the norm for internet behavior or internet community behavior now.
Well, I think it was pretty enforced back then too. I know Kia was always very careful about brigading stuff to the point where they didn't even allow NP links or even archives of Reddit posts at this point. I don't think they do.
Mhm.
That's how careful they were. And I know the Sargon at the time, of course, in his videos and even like on his channel, it says, "Do not contact the people in my videos." I know that that was a pretty common sentiment. Now, again, like
That's good.
I don't think though that like what do you think happened? Do you think that like Sargon made a video and it criticized Anita Sarkeesian? But probably not just Sargon, right? It was probably like hundreds of different content creators, including myself, made videos criticizing Anita Sarkeesian's work. At least dozens did.
Yeah.
And some of those fans, maybe they were because they were kids, maybe because they were mentally unhealthy, whatever it happened to be. Maybe they're just assholes. They decided that they wanted to send like gore pictures to Anita Sarkeesian, which one person did. Well, not to Anita herself, but to someone else. And
Yeah.
they decided like, they wanted
And
to tweet gore pictures out at them or say "Go kill yourself," LMAO or whatever, right?
yeah. And you mentioned age, and sort of like this is my reflection on it. I'm probably 5 to 10 years older than the median of the Gamergate, anti-Gamergate crowd. I am more of a creator than a consumer in this industry, and that's, you know, where I found myself. And so it, you know, it's not like I'm trying to say, oh, here's what's what, kids, listen to old Grandpa Gen X, but um the behaviors that emerged in 2010 to 2015 is like very endemic of something I saw myself doing in my mid 20s, early to mid 20s. And then now that I'm a little older, I'm mellowing out and I'm not so against those damn 20 something kids. I'm mellowing out and becoming more accepting of you know, the rash decisions they might have made. So
Well,
it's you know, it's a function of the entire population and the population moving with this social experience.
and Karl, the age thing I think is huge. Actually, I really do. And that's not to say that there's nobody who's 50 years old and an asshole, right? Obviously, there are 50-year-old assholes. But when I interviewed two of the third-party trolls. Pterodax, he was 19 when GamerGate started. Just a bored 19-year-old kid, you know. And then um, Avius, he was 14 years old, and he was one of the people who harassed people from Sargon's videos. He even admits to this.
Yeah.
He says he was like 14, and then maybe like 15 later on, 16 maybe. But I don't know how many years he was active with the trolling stuff. But um, when he was 14, though, he talks about how he didn't like the social justice warriors. Not He didn't even know what GamerGate was. He knew nothing about GamerGate at all. Actually, he just didn't like SJWs. And so he would try to find SJWs in part because of this group chat he was in, um, where him and his friends would fuck with the social justice warriors. And then also he'd find them through like watching anti-SJW videos and be like, "Oh, look at this stupid person, what they said," and then he would send out gore pictures at them and tell them to kill themselves. Like not death threats, like nothing illegal probably, but like, just shitty behavior. And he just did this because he thought it was funny. Because he was a dumb kid and he thought this was a good way for me to troll and have fun. And I was kind of like that too when I was a kid. I don't think I ever
Oh,
sent anyone
yeah.
gore pictures.
Man,
But
this
like,
was no, this was like a huge part of the pre 2010s like the 2005 2006 you know, something awful forums internet was oh god, did you see the awful thing that the, you know, the infamous 3 sites that we knew back in the day, um Goat Sex, Tub Girl, and Lemon Party, stuff like that. This is like, you know, don't Google those, kids. Do not Google those. This is like the thing that we did for a laugh
yeah,
in 2005. And so he's here 14. Someone did that to him, and oh my god, it changed his life and gave him a mission to trigger those same feelings in people he considered bad. So yeah, age and sort of social context is enormous in the decisions people made and the fallout.
yeah. Well, for him personally, I don't know if anyone trolled him specifically, Avius. Um, but he does say that he says that he grew up in a black neighborhood. He's white, but he grew up in a black
Mhm.
neighborhood, and so he was able to use the N word because he was with other black people who knew him and who was part of the community. They didn't care. That's what he says, at least. And so he
Right.
says when he went online and started playing games on the internet and stuff, he started using the N word, and was a, he was criticized very heavily for this. He said, and that's when he decided he wanted to attack the social justice warriors because he felt like they weren't trying to understand that, like, well, I'm not using it in a hateful way, so it's okay. But that's his story. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's motive, but I'm sort of, and I've heard that motive, you know, from other people. there's a few people on Twitch Politics who have a similar story.
So there is this meeting. This has been brought up in many of the interviews I've done with people, but there is this meeting of the old internet with the new, and where the old internet was people who cared about people who knew what the internet was, right? It was people who you weren't on the internet in 2005 probably, unless you either one had to work on the internet for some reason, like for your job, or two, like you were like a hobbyist or you knew what the fuck you were doing, right? Whereas, like, if you were, especially like in 1995, right, or 1985, if you're on like Usenet and stuff, you're probably not using that stuff unless you really know what the fuck you're doing. Whereas, like now now everyone's on social media, right? The the people who are functionally illiterate are on social media, so it's like a different world now.
Yeah. And I guess this is, I guess the other function of age is the older participants remember, like, Carter, Reagan, Clinton, all the political influence of the day and all of the backlash against the smallest bits of social progress that we had, and we felt we're very in our emotions when it came to anything that seemed regressive, because we faced many different regressive moments in our lives in the the 90s and the 2000s, especially 2000. And so it's hard not to react somewhat emotionally, for a 20 to 30 year old to really have that lizard brain reaction to something like this. And that's really where I was in 2014. And you see, I've got a PAX shirt on. I was a volunteer at PAX 2014 Seattle, and my venue that I was volunteering at got a warning. Watch out for crazies showing up at this theater, because Zoe Quinn had to bow out of her appearance on this panel because of the current controversy. And that was all anyone could talk about, and all anyone knew about Gamergate was there was a threat of physical violence, that someone was running away from the convention, our convention, that we wanted to be a welcoming environment, because of something that happened on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I obviously, I don't think anybody should be harassing Zoe Quinn or threatening her, and it sucks that she felt that she needed to cancel her panel at the thing, or cancel her appearance at the panel. I obviously don't make any excuses to justify that. I don't think you do either, Raymond. Do you?
I don't know what the panel was.
Yeah, I
or
don't
what
know
the
either about the
specific threat
specifics.
was. So this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
I'll find you the name of it.
Well, I heard that there was I haven't verified this. I'm not gonna say, but I heard that there was something involving one of the PAX things, but I haven't looked in, I haven't verified the claim, so I'm not gonna talk about it.
Yeah, it was in the Hilton.
What was it, like a bomb threat that got called in, or was it just like she just
not a
canceled her
bomb
own?
threat? Yeah, she decided not to show up for this. It was like it was some industry-wide faux professional wrestling dramatic personality-based panel, where people would shit talk each other, and someone would come up, someone pretend to be the Undertaker, and they had a thing where they turned off the lights and everything, and she just got written out of the show at that point. But that's my best memory of what happened in, it was a September.
This doesn't sound like that big of a. I'm sorry, like, but like, if the only thing that happened is that she's just like, well, I'm kind of in the spotlight right now, I don't feel like doing it. Like, if that's the case, I don't care.
And 300 plus volunteers had their guard up looking for Gamergaters protesting PAX, because of Zoe Quinn. That was the effect, was like this activated the gaming community.
Yeah, I mean
And
that seems kind of weird, dude. Like obviously a convention, if somebody makes a threat or something against one of the panelists or attendees, they should, at least
right.
in theory, right, try to like take that seriously. But like nothing happened, obviously. There were no
Right.
GamerGaters. There was no issue.
There might have been a few
Well,
who
who
showed up.
cares? If GamerGate people
Yeah.
are allowed, they have freedom of speech, they have freedom of movement, they're allowed to go to conventions, they're allowed to go to panels.
Right. And you know, and having more patience these days, and definitely having seen a lot worse than that happen, you know, it's more acceptable. Like it was, I think it was 2018 or 2017, after the weapons threat in a esports event in Florida, when PAX started putting metal detectors at every entrance, and now it's just a part of our reality.
Well, see,
Is
but part of it, you guys got to stop caving, not caving to the stupid bullshit. No, I'm serious. Like you guys are killing the convention scene because you have the security theater bullshit. When you have a 90-year-old woman with a fucking he's like, "Oh, hand me your bag." No, I'm serious. This is happening. This has happened to one of the conventions in St. Louis. Though thankfully the other ones aren't doing this shit. Um, where they literally they have the security theater, this unarmed security guard who's like, I gotta check everybody's bag and make everybody wait in line for fucking 2 hours every time you leave and enter the convention center. And what's this unarmed security guard going to do? In one case, the unarmed security guard was literally someone who was in like their 70s. Okay, it's like a 70-year-old woman. I said 90, it was a bit of exaggeration, but it's like what is this person going to do against a terrorist? It's complete bullshit. It wastes everybody's time, and it's a huge pain in the ass.
Well, that's I'm sorry, that's a little ignorant from someone who's been a volunteer at these things. Like
No,
we
I
have an
have
escalation.
volunteered. I volunteered for conventions as well. Look,
Like
most of the
how many
conventions,
people?
a few thousand, but
Okay.
yeah,
Not
local conventions.
30,000?
No, it
Okay.
might be a little bit different with the bigger event, but actually, like Dragon Con, um, they don't do metal detectors at Dragon Con. That's probably one of the biggest. It's actually one of the biggest conventions in the world,
Mhm.
and they're just doing just fine. I think that
Yeah.
people are so terrified of the terrorists that they're giving away more and more and more of their individual liberty and free time. And like the convention scene implementing draconian security measures is like one small aspect of that. Um, but it's definitely something in our society that has become increasingly a problem. And it never rolls back either, right? Like we actually live in the it's you were way more likely to get killed throughout pretty much all of human history than you would in 21st century America. Like, look at the
Right.
history of this country and the history of violence. The idea that, like,
Okay.
well, in the
Yeah,
1970s we were allowed to do conventions, but now we have to have metal
and you know,
detectors.
I'm glad I'm not shoveling shit and burning it to cook my food, but I do live in America, and I do have expectations of personal safety in, you know, a major West Coast city, and that's you know, be real for a minute. But I'll sort of correct you a little bit. Is it was really bad. Like metal detectors, the first year of PAX West, and especially I think it was PAX East, when they were especially poorly managed. Like 2017, 2018, it just took forever to get into that convention center in Boston. And there have been advances in technology or personnel or procedure that it's improved. You know, you'll call it security theater, but it is a balancing act in terms of security posture. It is a balancing act, and it's, you know, just like responding to a threat against a panelist. Those are things that, you know, organizers have to take into consideration. And
Yeah,
just to loop
I
this back
just
around, this comes back to that, you know, if who's the fourth estate and who's responsible for their communities. Well, in some way none of us, but in some way all of us are responsible for our communities. So
well, wait, I look again. I say it's security theater. If you look at like the audits, the TSA doesn't pass their audits. Okay, these are trained professional security guards who are supposed to be managing our airports, and
I,
they're failing their
I,
own audits.
sure, and that's I hope that's different from, and the reason they do audits, by the way, is because it's different from a for-profit venture like PAX, whereas trying to assure people that, okay, we are doing something, they're not going to prevent, like they're obviously not preventing drugs getting into PAX. They're not preventing probably anything but a really serious weapon or someone wearing body armor under their coat from getting in. That's probably the only thing, because I go in with cameras all the time, and my camera stuff gets flagged, and so that's the kind of density that gets you flagged.
Yeah,
And
it's not
that's it.
it's not really GamerGate related, but I don't think that we probably are going to agree on, like, look, obviously
Okay.
conventions can probably implement some measures, right? Like they should have like some sort of measures, sure, that you could talk about. But I do think that this idea, and this is how they usually go about doing it because they're incompetent, they punish large numbers of innocent people and make super draconian rules that affect everybody negatively instead of going after the specific individuals or targeting specific behaviors that they want to stop. And the measures themselves don't seem to be super effective. Like when you like Anime St. Louis, right? Anime St. Louis was one in St. Louis that has implemented these security. They didn't used to do this. They didn't used to do this at all. It's a recent phenomenon. It just started a couple of years ago, right before COVID, or it might have been right after COVID. I think it might have been right after COVID, where they're like, okay, you're not allowed to have any bags except like clear plastic bags. You have to piece bond every single thing, or we're not even gonna allow weapons at all. You can't have room parties. You can't have alcohol, anything like that anymore. You can't do anything. And they're gonna make you. They have literally elderly security guards, rent-a-cops, um, are the ones who are managing this, and they're just sitting down in their chair. They don't even care. Most of it seems they're just like, oh, whatever. It's like I don't think this is going to help anybody. I don't think it's
All
going to
right. You
stop a
wanted to move on.
terrorist threat. I just
You wanted to move
no, but
on.
it's like it's
So
okay.
I'm
I
gonna.
do, but it's like well, what the fuck? Maybe some of them take it more seriously than that, but it just doesn't seem like, where are all these terrorists? Where are all the bombs that are going off inside the convention centers? It doesn't seem like it's a real phenomena.
Well, okay. So you want to move on, or
Okay, all
I
right, we can
mean,
move on. We can move on.
it's your show.
Well, I
I can
don't.
work something up if you want material. I can work something up,
All
but
right.
it's fine. Um,
So Koretsky, I took notes. Koretsky talked about the Airplay SPJ. What was it? The Ethics Week SPJ Ethics Week hashtag, and some of the posts there were spam, from spam bots, and then other posts, or from trolls. Other posts were legitimate. Um, the SPJ says that they were scared, and he says, "But I went through and read it because I don't have a life." And
Well, he
because
said that the SPJ just kind of ignored it.
yeah, they didn't make a big deal out of it one way or the other. They apparently weren't happy that there was spam on the hashtag, including like furry porn apparently or something. But he wasn't a huge fan of that.
There's
But they
all
weren't a huge fan
kinds
of
of
that. But
stuff.
he actually read through that. He's like, oh, there's actually like a lot of really good tweets in here. And so because he made this decision to actually read the tweets because he doesn't have a life, he says. That's why we had Airplay. That's why we had your documentary, I guess, too, huh?
Yeah.
I think that that's actually kind of a cool story. What do you think, Karl?
yeah, no, that's I had my own sort of interactions on Twitter around the time, and there were a few like you know what, nothing worthwhile, but there were some discussions that were elevating and some knock-on effects, especially like block lists. At one point you talk about block lists, and I'm on several block lists right now because I'm pro-nuclear. So the whole environment of political discourse was definitely affected by by this whole thing, and it shows that, you know, more tolerance and more discourse is better than less. Even if, you know, you're worried of the effect on women, even if you're worried on this targeted harassment, those things need to be addressed in themselves. And we can talk about, you know, the wins and the great. I actually made a list of wins, what I thought were wins for, you know, GamerGate or Airplay specifically. Things like Sarkeesian plagiarizing the gameplay footage, right? H Bomber Guy just canceled like 5 people over that.
Yeah. Though he did make an exception for Hassan, which is kind of infuriating.
Nice. And then you mentioned the Colbert segment was pretty good. I loved the game because I was, you know, steeped in the culture at the time. GamePolitics.com showing up so often was great. The crash override logs, the Sargon showing up at VidCon, and that being an act of aggression, was a pretty good event to cover and connect to this. And as well, sort of Boogie's interactions at VidCon were great as well, I thought.
Yeah, I've been wrestling on whether or not to keep that in, considering that all of the controversies that have been around him since then, and with the recent documentary, and he was good. He was a good and notable figure of the time.
I mean, yeah, you've got more Boogie footage, so it's something that, you know, someone who wants to review the life and times of Boogie will probably want to watch it.
Yeah.
So,
and another
go ahead, Raymond.
go ahead. And another thing about the plagiarism, the thing with the Nita Sarkeesian is that it was just the plagiarism itself is just kind of sloppy. And if you're a documentary filmmaker, copyright law is just one incredible headache that you need to have. Like, I got in contact with a documentary filmmaker who has made some documentaries you might have heard of, and said that and he directed me to like this big textbook, like this huge textbook that the industry uses, and you just have to in order to create, you just have to become an expert in how to properly source and vet. And a lot of the material in this document, and that was one of my biggest concerns about this documentary, is that it's made entirely of, just because that's what I wanted to do, was make a documentary out of entirely pre-existing material. And then a lot of that pre-existing material has pre-existing material of its own in terms of video clips and images and whatnot. And so the best I could do, and there's like a list of over 200 sources that you can find in the credits, video clips, and I do my best to try and list whatever other sources that those videos sampled, and I put like the disclaimer at the beginning and end of the video. So I don't really begrudge anyone for that. Maybe they missed a citation or anything, but what really angers me about Anita Sarkeesian's use of it is that her entire persona is that she has been a gamer all her life, and it shows that she hasn't even played many of the games that she's critiquing. And, when she has captured her own foot, and I do use some video game footage that was captured from other people, and I cite them in the credits, though I do capture some of my own footage. Did capture some of my own footage, like if you saw the Shadow of the Colossus footage in the first one, that was footage I captured myself. And her doing it, and just her not capturing her own footage, and if she does, it's to glaringly misrepresent the content of what's in the game. And I just find that incredibly deceptive. And I, d- I don't begrudge anyone for having a bias or for perhaps being sloppy with some of their citations, but I do begrudge them if they are actively lying to their audience. And it's yeah.
Yeah,
If
I think from the progressive perspective, it's something that we just had a huge like performers strike about, is if you're wearing a 3D rig, that is a performance, and the licensing over that and the terms over that are a big deal. I have sat in studio, and it's it's not an insignificant paycheck to get paid to perform in a video game, to be a gamer operator. So I contracted doing that for a few months last year, and so I'm not on the side of people who say it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. We had major writers' strikes even as early as 2008, which Anita should have remembered before she took those performances and incorporated it without credit and without negotiating rights.
Yeah. Though if you're using it for, yeah,
Commentary,
as I
it's
said,
different.
criticism and commentary, but yeah, the copyright law itself is just a massive headache that it's really hard to navigate around.
Do we have any thoughts on
Yeah.
Oliver Campbell's speech? And God, am I gonna have to actually fucking read it? I wrote it all down.
Which one?
Well, the one where he talks about every time you say no.
Every time you say no?
Am I gonna have to read
In the
this?
Google Plus room. Was that
Yeah,
the
it was a
one?
Google Hangout. Yeah, he said,
Yeah.
"GamerGate has a much bigger cause than you think. You are in
Yeah,
the
that's
forefront of the biggest pushback against these people and this ideology." He was talking about social justice warriors. He said in the beginning,
Right.
"You are
yeah.
the vanguard of this thing. You are putting your feet in the ground. No, sorry. No, the line is right here. You are not going any further than this because this is insane." And what it's doing to other people, to other industries, the people that we are dealing with are not able to last. They have no resilience. They have no ability to endure hardship, actual trauma, or anything difficult. Well, if any of these things occur, they just crumple like a sheet of paper and fall into essentially a blubbering mess. And what I ended up saying to them is that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You just have to outlast them. And what will happen is that as you continue to push back and continue to resist, and as you say no, you are going to inspire other people to do the same. You're going to encourage other people to go, this is kind of stupid. This is bullshit. It's going to encourage people to go, I do think men and women should be treated equally, but I don't think that the way you're doing about doing it is the best way to achieve it. Just looking at all of those things, we are starting to see it. People are pushing back. People that are not GamerGate. They're saying, "Yeah, this is kind of dumb." They are starting to get called out on this kind of behavior, and that's what we needed. And the great thing about this is that gamers have become the unlikely hero of the story. Nobody expected that. No one expected it. No one expected this type of resistance from gamers. And so the situation has come down, and they thought they were just going to railroad through this like they have everything else. And then they hit a brick wall with a bunch of people collectively saying "fuck you," and now they don't know what to do about it. And because gamers have been looked down upon for such a long period of time, they are and, and because gamers have been looked down upon for such a long period of time, and they are the same ones who are now bravely saying, "No, kiss my ass." And now I think we are going to start seeing a lot of other people try to catch up and go, "Why is it that a gamer could sit down and say what they said, and do so bravely with valor? Why am I not doing it?" But right here in this time and in this place, we are beginning to see the cultural shift that will inevitably occur. Sorry, I'm not as eloquent as Oliver Campbell.
Yeah, that's from from the animated portion of the documentary, and and that speech that was adapted into a comic by Kukurio, I believe.
I've interviewed him.
Yeah, interviewed them, and yeah, it's kind of it's kind of grandiose, and you can kind of consider, and in some ways, at some direction, you look at it, it might be a little pretentious or a little grandiose to say that this controversy has all of these grand implications, though I think in some ways it has been borne out. And with the and the comic book adaptation, can I I'm still not real, and I'm still like conflicted as how how even I approach that. I guess that's why I animated the comic book, because the comic book itself is kind of self-aware. The comic is kind of self-aware. It's kind of a little cartoon. It is a cartoon. It's cartoonish. It's might be a little cartoonishly grandiose, and it kind of acknowledges that, but and at the same time, it's kind of been borne out through history that talking points that were really popularized in Gamergate have really kind of jumped out onto the really global in really the global discussion. We see this conversation going on in other countries, such as from the stop. If you consider Florida, I just realized I was going to mention Florida after I said other countries, but as if Florida is another country. But yeah, we see the Stop Woke Act in Florida, and there was a Oxford debate on whether wokeness has gone too far. These are now things that have caught the public imagination all across the globe. So to see what he has said really being borne out is really is at the same time, it's cartoonishly grandiose, and at another way, it's kind of appropriate.
I get what you're saying, and the problem that I have is that you're saying this is a just and righteous cause, and we need to fight back against wokeism. But remember, Gamergate was a nonpartisan movement. Most of them were Democrat. It's kind of, there's a little bit of there's a contradiction there when you reflect on the polling of the community at the same time delivering this this message that is somewhat individualist authoritarian versus the other side, which is collectivist authoritarian.
Individualist authoritarian.
This is what we imagine the fight against wokeism is individualist authoritarian.
I don't think anybody would I don't think anybody would say that.
Okay.
No.
So if you're going to try and say that the movement is individualist libertarian, you've done massive harm.
A lot of people would say that they're more libertarian. I think Gamergate was like fundamentally more of like I wouldn't say libertarian, it's classical liberal. But I understand what you're saying, because not everybody who disagrees with social justice warriors does so for the same reason, right? That's what you're sort of. But a lot of people disagree with them for a whole host of reasons. Like some of them don't like them because of authoritarianism. Other people are perfectly fine with authoritarianism in other areas. They just don't like them because they disagree with their ideology.
Right. And you can't have it both ways. This is an individualist movement.
Well, yeah, and woke and what we can call the opposition, what we can call wokeism, is a collectivist movement. So it's really asserting liberal values against illiberal values.
It's hard to accept that. I think that at the very least, if you want to have that perspective, you can't oversell it. And I think that's one problem, and it is a tone argument, and it's kind of almost silly, but and you say it yourself, this is too grandiose, and it is that it oversells the Gamergate movement and the individualist component of that as a righteous cause. And for that reason, you're going to hit a hard wall in your trying to convince someone. I don't think, as you said, Tachyon, this is not going to convince many anti-Gamergaters. It's going to be a hard sell to get them to buy into it, especially the second part.
Well, so there's also, actually we can explore this path more. So I think it's weird because you ask people about this, and like I think that there very much is a sense within the Gamergate people, most of them, not everybody, but there's like a sense that like the Gamergate side is this sort of like libertarian, not like right-wing libertarian like in terms of economics, but like libertarian in terms of like their cultural attitudes. Like people should be allowed to make the video games that they want to make. People should be allowed to more or less live their lives as they see fit. Almost everybody is pro-gay marriage. Almost everybody's pro-weed. Almost everybody. Abortion's a bit more of a divided issue, but like it's majority pro-choice. So like it just seems like most people just like, hey, look, you want to live your life, you want to go grow your marijuana farm, and guard it with your AR-15. You go right ahead and do that, right? That's sort of the Gamergate attitude, you could say, towards like most things in life, unless there's like good reason for that not to be the case. Maybe not the gun thing in particular. There's not really good data on Gamergate on guns, but like go grow your weed and then go make your big tittied anime girl comic book. That might be a better example.
Right.
But I think that's fine. I think that's great. I think that I think everybody should be a libertarian in that sense. I think that if you're trying to like morally police what other people can read, their comic books, their video games, I think you should go fuck yourself. That's my opinion. And that's I think that that's great. That's how people should respond to moral panics. They should
But
tell them, go fuck yourself. They should have the data, and they should debate. I don't mean like go up to Anita Sarkeesian in real life and you say go fuck you, right? I don't mean that, but I mean like you should have the data, or Jack Thompson or whoever, have the data and debate them and prove them wrong, and critique their ideas, because they do deserve critique. And
you might be right. Yeah, I'd say you might be right if not for this crossing paths with the authoritarian sect of illiberal anti-wokeism, libertarian anti-wokeism, which is, you know, taking on a specific culture war bent. And here we are in 2024, and the election looks like it's going to be a culture war election again. So if this is a libertarian ideal, then that's a big W for Joe Brandon, right? Right? Or is anti-wokeism going to fail when it comes to this year's election, or am I
don't.
Is my sarcasm too thick? Sorry, I'm.
I'll let Raymond answer, but I don't have any predictions on this. I don't think that I don't know how important the specific. I don't think GamerGate was really all that important when it comes to politics. I really don't. I know that people try to incorporate it, like Ninetales.
It's a grand movement, though, right?
I mean, I think that is just mostly a bunch of people who really liked video games, who got like basically smeared by the media because they didn't agree with their politics. Because like some people are assholes, but like most of the people involved, they didn't cause Trump to be elected. They didn't cause like the downfall of civilization. Like it has like some like minor impacts on journalism, some minor impacts maybe on like the culture war stuff, but like people blow it up. And not saying you do, Karl, or you, Raymond. I mean, you kind of do, Raymond, a little bit. you kind of glaze it a little. You glaze it a little too much, I think. But
well, I don't know. I think for this entire documentary, I wanted to approach it in kind of an arch way, in a way that it is acknowledging that GamerGate is part of this grander conversation about all these things: wokeness, journalism ethics, intersectionality, loss of trust in institutions. But at the same time, it kind of approaches it in a really arch way, kind of comical fashion, to just acknowledge the absurdity of it all, as you see at the very end of the documentary, that with that clip between Joe Rogan and Milo Yiannopoulos, where he goes and where Joe Rogan says, "And isn't it crazy that this all started with a dispute about video games? The left really fucked up when they tried to take the video games." Are you okay with F-bombs on this screen?
I'm okay with anything. Except don't use the N-word because YouTube doesn't like it.
Okay. Yeah. So that's just the whole approach to it.
Yeah. Milo is, of course, like my number one character of like, you said he could have been better chosen in terms of the Airplay afternoon segment, but
this is
where, oh, sorry, someone else's
it was
words.
It was really James Desborough who said that the candidates should have been better chosen, and I specifically asked him whether he was referring to Milo Yiannopoulos in that with that line, and he confirmed it. And so I left that in because it was funny. I have no personal like gripe against Milo as a person. I do acknowledge that he is a professional asshole, and that is how he has built that is what he's built his career on. I have no personal grudge against him, but if it's funny, but if relentlessly mocking him will make a better watch, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he was sending. I mean, it's not like he was sent there necessarily. If you kind of look at the Airplay thing, I think Koretsky did a pretty good job, but like he he outsourced, I think, one aspect of it too much to one specific person. From my understanding, I respect Koretsky a lot. I'm not like casting shade on him, but it seems like because he interacted with Alan Bakari um, quite a bit. It seemed like he kind of like let Alum kind of pick the panel, which is like
Yeah.
not the end of the world because I think most of the people on the panel were fine, but that might be why you got Milo too, because Alum and Milo were friends and worked for the same company.
Yeah.
Oh, ethical
And
lapse. Kidding.
yeah, and I just fine. And Koretsky is just very entertaining as well because he's just got that dry because he's just got that dry sarcastic edge, like when he said, I went through the hashtag because I don't have a life. That's part of it. And his interactions with Milo were really entertaining because it's just flamboyant narcissism meeting dry sarcasm. And it's like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And so their interactions just were very entertaining to watch. And yeah, and I think they made for a more entertaining film.
And like to be fair to Koretsky, he did recognize this was a problem and tried to like
Yeah.
do a little bit to address it because he did say I interviewed him. He did publicly. He did streams where he would try to do like a panel to pick the panel. But the problem that I think he ran into, well, like one of which was like that he trusted Alum probably a little bit too much. Um, or not even trusted. I'm not even saying trusted him. He just thought that he was, I guess, operating in good faith or something, and maybe he was. But also, Milo, he was popular during GG.
Mhm.
A large segment of GamerGate hated him, but a large segment liked him, and a lot of people were kind of indifferent. That's sort of the reality. Milo did have a following, at least in the beginning. Now, when he later like became a PDF file and stuff, like with not
Well,
so much.
I
But
don't think he. Well,
we didn't become
that's a
one. But
kind of he's trying to.
he made
He
excuses
has
for it.
not. Yeah, he has not really processed some things that happened to him
Yeah,
in his
that's
childhood.
that's a very charitable way of phrasing it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes for a entertaining bit in the movie as well. Where it just cuts from that moment on Joe Rogan to his resignation announcement. Yeah.
Well, Karl, you said recently that you obviously you. Do you mind if I bring up something from the group chat? I should ask first.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You said that you're having you view yourself more unsympathetic slightly towards the GamerGate people, but that you think that there maybe is like a problem on the left with some of the identity politics stuff.
Yeah, and I think the term that more accurately describes it, it's not that talking about identity and politics is bad. It's when you divorce identity from your mission, and the correct progressive mission is you're finding systems of oppression and you're dismantling them. And when you decide, hey, I've got this system of oppression, but hey, instead of breaking that down, I'm going to use this to ingratiate myself. I'm going to use it for a profit. I'm going to shut down this one game jam and build up my own. That was another, maybe probably win from the part 2 of the film, talking about the fine young capitalists and Red Bull Game Jam. So yeah, the mission is dismantling systems of oppression, and identity opportunism, using an identity to push other people down. That's a problem, and we see it very often in the left in actual organizing when you've got a goal, you've got to stop police violence, and you've got to build up, this economic backlog of the local Black community. And what does it become about? It becomes, someone's personal stomping ground, someone's personal crusade to get on the city council, anything like that. And it's, it reflects badly on the left movement when too many individuals make the show about themselves.
And you brought up the
And I think
Boogie. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, I think it definitely happened then. What do you say about Boogie?
You brought up the Boogie incident where he was on the panel with Anita Sarkeesian, and she was saying, "Hey, I wrote down."
It was great. It was a great quote from him. I didn't write it down. You've got it?
I'm trying to find it right now. Yeah, I wrote down so many notes. I got like 50 notes. Okay. Well, I didn't write down the exact quote, but I wrote, Boogie says that he was afraid of upsetting Anita Sarkeesian, the entire panel. And then he also...
Oh, I've got the timestamp. It's 2 hours, 19 minutes.
Well, he's not wanting us to play it because it's private. You have to pay money for it. Unless he doesn't care. I don't... But basically, she talks about oppressor-oppressed dynamics while sitting next to Boogie. And, like, she implies, it seems, that harassment fits into this oppressor-oppressed dynamic. I think you'll agree that's not me strawmanning her. That's like basically what she says. That harassment on the internet fits into the oppressor-oppressed dynamic, where like gender, race, white versus black, Asian, woman versus man, etc. And then she's saying this right next to Boogie 2988, who's like this, overweight white guy who also received internet harassment. It's a kind of like a bad look.
Well, it can be, and it depends exactly what you mean in the context. But
it seems
I think
like she's dismissing his experience.
It's definitely possible, and we see it. We've seen it online as a vehicle to dismiss oppression of working class white men, basically, by saying, "Hey, you've got privilege, so toughen up and man up, and just work harder, sweaty, because you're so privileged." But this is the problem: is that it's ignoring the system of oppression. And so, yeah, I don't know if that was her intent. But
I doubt it was.
Seems like it. It seems like it because the way she objected to Boogie reframing this as a more egalitarian thing, as more of a systemic problem than an individual problem.
Yeah, though to be clear, like the only evidence we have for her reframing it was Boogie's own statement and the statement of one witness. So it's not like 100% proven that she was an asshole to him after, though two people say that was the case. I wouldn't doubt it. but like she deserves the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah. With Anita Sarkeesian, I think that for somebody who has a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And that is the problem with intersectionality, is that when all you have is intersectionality, every single problem is going to relate to that. It's an ideology that is pretty closed off from any kind of disconfirming evidence. And it was later reported that she said that you didn't get harassment because you're a white male, you get harassment because you're obese, which is just extremely dismissive of what harassment is, and that is what harassment is, and that is just somebody trying to bring you down with whatever superficial aspect of yourself that they can find, and that's because, and as somebody who spent all of their school life bullied, I can tell you that bullies will look for any superficial characteristic that they can go at to bring you down. It has nothing inherently to do with some kind of system of oppression or anything to do like that. And I think the reason why all of these, that identity politics has become so popular, is because in an age of social media, when everybody is competing for a limited amount of attention and views, that you are going to use any kind of superficial characteristic to give yourself a leg up. And so that's why we see these incredibly mediocre people just glom onto identity politics, because it's the only thing that they have to give themselves a leg up.
I get what you're saying about, bullying as, just an instinctive thing doesn't have anything directly to do with systems of oppression, but it's a function of how these kind of things get enforced. Being whether or not you're neurotypical, whether or not you have any other, missability that's different from others. It is how we force people to normalize in society, and that's revealing of such systems. So I know that it's, no one's going to bully you because you're white. They're going to bully you because you're different. And and some places in America, being white is different, and it's incredibly dependent on where you live, where you grew up, how you functioned in your social circles. And so I think to wrap the whole Anita VidCon thing up, it's not intersectional to say that one person's oppression is invalid or another person's oppression is better. That's actually the PragerU recontextualization of intersectionality. Intersectionality ought to be, we identify multiple overlapping systems that happen to hurt some people more than others. The goal is not to lift people up, to give them individualistic opportunities. The goal is the systematic dismantling of the systems that oppress us all within those, intersecting lines, right?
Well, if you can identify a system that is oppressive, like the one thing that I can outright say is that I outright acknowledge as systematically racist is the drug laws in this country. If you look back in time, you can see that they were put in place for explicitly racist reasons. And they have just kind of been around for so long, and they're just so destructive that we really need to, and they've been destructive towards a particular portion, to a particular demographic, that it's time to reanalyze why we have them there. And really the only good excuse for them are these kind of really puritanical, more just people trying to enforce their view of what a morally correct action is, but I think we're seeing the evidence of it slowly being dismantled. But yeah, but if you've yeah, that's that's pretty much shit. That's pretty much all that I can say about. And I still think that in a social media environment, you're going to where everybody has a platform. People are going to grab onto any individual characteristic about themselves that can like get them more attention and bolster their reputation. Yeah. And yeah.
Is those opportunities, those pesky opportunities, and you can't not be tempted sometimes. But yeah, this is the failing. Tachyon, you asked me, why am I more in line with your motives than against them compared to a decade ago, and that's pretty much why. It is, not out of generalized resentment. It's specifically that we're losing the plot. We're off mission when it comes to what really matters. And I hope we figure it out. I'm personally much more invested in climate. I'm switching out of the games industry into an energy job, and I think that if we really pay attention to the mission, to solving problems, we'll be in a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to ask, what do you think, and you can answer this for Raymond if you want as well, what do you think my motive is? I'm just curious.
Well, you said at one point that you took down all your videos, and now there's new energy around GamerGate. I kind of worry that you could be trying to sanitize some of the harm, and that would be the hesitancy that I had previously to interact with this project is sanitizing the harm that GamerGate did. But that's why I think it's important to be here, is that we have to recognize that there is harm in some of these incidents, and there's especially harm to people, whether or not you think that they deserved it or not. There's definitely deliberate, intentional, individual harm that is not principled. So aside from that, it's good to recapture what you've done. Maybe you've had a change of heart about scrubbing your internet history, and
Yeah,
you want to
very much.
recapture it and
Well, not.
recontextualize it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. It's not about. I actually deleted my internet history years ago, like 3 years ago, or maybe it was 2. Um, because I graduated college and I was like entering the workforce. Like, well, I was already working, but I was like, I need to focus on my career. I don't care about the online stuff anymore. Um, Gamergate was already basically over at that point, and I wasn't really passionate about making the videos about like criticizing like politics, like the far right. I was making anti-far right videos, and like that was mainly my focus after the GG stuff. So I was like, well, I don't have the passion for this, and I don't want to get fucked over and lose my job because of this. But like, I don't think anything that I said was like super duper duper spicy. In fact, I'll tell you the spiciest thing you might have seen. um, it was this live stream. This was like 2014. No, it's like 2015, I guess. 2015, maybe 2016. It was like super early into the GG stuff for me. So probably 2015, early 2015. I was in this live stream with maybe I shouldn't say, but whatever. It was public information. I don't think it's that bad even. I was on a live stream talking about Black Lives Matter stuff, and I didn't say anything like racist, but it was with one of the anti-Gamergate people because we were talking about it. We somehow because there was protests back then about Black Lives Matter, and I was talking about
2016, yeah.
retrospectively. No, this was
Mhm.
before that. This was like 2014. This was
Oh,
2015. 2015.
nice.
But we were talking
Yeah.
about the protests around Michael Brown. And I said, well, when I was watching this, the protests happened. This wasn't during the Michael Brown thing. This was a couple years later. Um, I was talking about how like it was actually really cool to see all the explosions and fires and widespread rioting on television. I thought it looked really cool. And I'm like, obviously people are having their home, like their lives and businesses destroyed. That's terrible. I don't support that. But I think it looks really cool on television. And the anti-GamerGate person I was with, I don't remember I think I know who it was, but I don't know 100%. They were like, "Well, would you say that if they were white?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because it looks like some pretty awesome shit." And like, oh no, this is cursed, bro. This is cursed as fuck. But no one ever called me on that except for that one time. I guess because they didn't think I was saying anything super racist. Um, so they didn't try to cancel me over it or anything. Plus, like I was pretty small, so at that time especially. But like, yeah, that's probably like the most cursed moment.
That's definitely oh man, that's a boogaloo, what, not boogaloo. Oh yeah, what is that? Boogaloo boy perspective where you're like accelerationist looking for the whole system to come crashing down. So yeah, you love the fire. You're upset with the system, and it's an emotional response, to think like 2020, maybe you lost a job, maybe you're like worried about making rent when you finally get a job again. And yeah, like I was up on Capitol Hill here in Seattle, and so the sentiment is pretty much universal, whether it was directly in service of Black Lives Matter or whether it was just misplaced frustration. I can identify with that sentiment, but yeah, that's a spicy thing. That's a
Yeah.
spicy take.
Well, like I didn't like to be clear, like I wasn't even like political. At least not in the sense that I wouldn't think of myself as being political. Like I wasn't. I was just like, dude, holy shit! Look at my social media feed. Look at the television. Because I'm from St. Louis, where this was happening. So I was like paying super close attention. Like, dude, look, I'm really watching them burn down like parts of like the city where I live in, or like the neighbor, not the specific neighborhood that I live in, but like the I'm watching people burn down my city on like live TV, and it's like kind of fascinating. And I'm like, I got my social media feed up, and I'm like watching it on Facebook, the videos. I'm like, holy cow, this is like an intense thing because you never see stuff like this, or at least I
Yeah.
did. I was 20-year-old kid or yeah, basically. Well, no, I was like 19, I guess, when that happened, or 18 or 19. Not the stream, but the riots themselves, um, and the event that with Michael Brown. I was like an 18, 19-year-old kid, so I was like, holy shit! Like I can't believe I get to see all this. I just thought it was cool. I didn't like have like a political take at all.
Hmm.
Um, but obviously going on the internet, especially talking to some people who are more like more social justice aligned, you can't say shit like that. And they were right,
Yeah,
obviously. I mean, it's not a funny thing when people are losing their businesses.
yeah,
It sucks for those individuals, and like some people might have died in the protest. I don't know. Like, who knows?
yeah. The whole riots. I mean, like the whole like Seattle. In Seattle, I think I was there for the first bit of violence, for literally the first broken window, the first flashbang. It was right in front of my eyes, and so yeah, like the emotional reaction to that is, oh my god, this is happening. This is a moment in time that you're not going to forget, and that's like you forget all the context in that moment. But yeah, it was kind of a gotcha, but it is also like a um, something that you reflected on better afterwards.
So I I I I talked about. I don't know if you saw this, but I talked with Raymond in my interview with him for my book about how he approached the question of the anti-Gamergate people versus the way I approached it. Did you see that discussion?
No, I missed that.
Okay. So about a month maybe like a month and a half ago, something like that, I interviewed Raymond for the book, and I saw the interview. I saw the Airplay documentary, the full part, the full thing, and I was talking about how he approached handling the anti-Gamergate people. Now, as you saw, he's got a lot of receipts on some shit. and he's not afraid to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about some of the stuff that they did that was not really good. I deliberately didn't do that for this project in the beginning for my book because I knew that like they did some bad stuff. I didn't know how bad, you know. I thought it was I knew they did some stuff, but like it was years ago. I don't want to get into this project and be like, oh well, what about this horrible thing that Brianna Wu did? Or, like that's not the kind of person I am, and I didn't want to be perceived that way. Like, oh, he's just trying to cast doubt on that story, and I didn't know all the stuff that I know now. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make the book. I'm not gonna touch upon the anti-GG people. If they come up every once in a while, whatever. But like, I'm not gonna deliberately talk about like those three specific people, right? Like Anita, Zoe, and Brianna. Um, though over time, because I've learned more information and because I've changed the way I'm approaching the project over time, I'm thinking about it all the time. Not maybe too much at times, like what I want to do with it. And like I'm like it's part of the story. I got to cover it. Just like the third party trolls. I wasn't going to interview the third party trolls originally, but then I decided what the as part of the story I got to do it. So it's like well now I gotta talk about the three anti GamerGate people and I I've unfortunately learned a great many negative things about Zoe Quinn and Brianna Wu over the course of the past month, basically. And I don't know how I want to talk about that.
You don't have. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
I can't really contribute to this. I mean, I can say that you've got, I've got my own professional connections to many different people
Yeah.
on the target list, and I think the thing that will do the most harm to the tone of the project is to paint them as deserved targets, and that's something that is going to make it impossible to maintain any impartiality when you're watching this. Even if it's true, like it'll be seen as justifying harassment, and that's not going to work.
Well, so
So
I am careful. I don't ever say like I'm very careful
mhm.
not to say that anything justifies harassment, right?
Oh, right.
Right. I'm
But
very careful about that.
it'll have that tone.
Yeah. Well, but like part of but it is also true, right? Like it probably
Mhm.
the where I'm currently at with this, and I wasn't like this in the beginning. Um, I actually do think that like the credibility of the people making the claims matters. And I think that some of their credibility is not entirely intact for some people. And I think that
I
probably should inform the way that individuals
Yeah.
evaluate whether or not they trust this person's word at face value. Right? Like someone's actions and behaviors over the course of their life probably should inform the way we evaluate whether or not we think this person is an honest broker, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stick to the facts.
Yeah, that's what I've done, but like the facts in some cases aren't good. like this so the Stardust interview. And that was partly her fault and partly mine. And I've told Stardust that she should probably disclose that she's friends with Brianna Wu. I didn't know that at the time actually. She recently made a public statement saying that she was friends with Brianna Wu. Um, well, she made it in a YouTube chat section or Twitch chat section. But
Mhm.
I don't have any problem with Stardust. I'm not involved in that drama in any way.
Mhm.
I don't think she was being malicious in the interview. Some people have tried to cast aspersions that way. I don't think she was being malicious. I think that she just forgot to disclose. Same thing with Wick. A lot of these streamer people, they are not used to thinking themselves as journalists, or presenting news to
Well,
people. So they
well,
don't, they're a
that's
little bit fast and loose with the disclosure stuff, and I think that that's
yeah.
something that should be
Let me go
criticized.
ahead and disclose mine. I mean, I was an early contractor with Progressive Victory, so there's my Brianna Wu connection. Is that back in 2022, I ran at least 5 streams behind the scenes to get the content up on the airwaves and smoothly running. And so, when the PV folks turned over last year to new headliners, basically that's how I became reacquainted with Brianna. I didn't work directly with her. I think I was a consideration at one point for a producer role, but it was not something that ultimately ultimately turned up. But yeah, it's like we've all got. If you have an idea about what happened in Gamergate that's particularly strong, and you don't have connections in some way, I'd wonder what kind of authority you have on the subject. If you are either an organizer on the consumer movement / harassment movement, one of those gives you an authority, but on the other side, then you've got to, if you want to talk to anti-GG people, you have to be ready to understand that, yeah, they're going to be connected to the people who are targets.
Well, so do you still view it through that harassment lens?
It's inseparable. It was a moment in time, and I think that's the best thing. So I had in my notes, you have a choice in how you deliver these projects. Either it's all virtuous and perfect, or the tone of these projects has to step back and say, okay, these things happened, they're motivating factors. It informed on the people contributing, it informed on the motives of people contributing. The 14-year-old kid in his basement sending out gore pics was a part of Gamergate.
Well, he doesn't. He said
horrible.
He wasn't that specific person. At least,
okay.
He didn't even know what
Okay.
Gamergate was. He says that he had no idea about GG until years later. That's what he said.
But he knew these people were out there, and they're on his target list somehow.
Yeah, because he doesn't like social justice warriors, and his friend group didn't either. But like at that point, you're like, well, everything is Gamergate, right? Because like this 14-year-old.
Yeah, no, it is like a giant it's the singularity of 2014 that's inescapable, and everything orbited it in that year. And that was 2015, 2016, we had Gawker, the fall of Gawker and Trump and all that, and these are the things that happen in history, and these are tangential to those experiences. So yeah, it's a leaderless movement, as Ray, you correctly show. It's a leaderless movement, just like Project Chanology, just like all of these other things that the internet has done, good and bad. It's inescapable.
I don't think you can blame, though, the actions of someone like Avius on Gamergate. You say it's a leaderless movement, but it's still, even as a leaderless movement, I wouldn't ascribe things to it that we have no reason.
Who am I blaming? Who am I blaming? Am I blaming every last person that participated, or am I marking that it's a correlation?
I think it's a denial of agency. That's what I think it is. I think that any other online movement, basically, we know how other online movements were treated, right? Nobody went around saying that BLM or Occupy Wall Street were harassment campaigns, even though they probably had
they said
way worse things.
I have had to listen to people say that Black Lives Matter and Chaz Chop killed 2 people, and I contributed to that.
The Chop thing might actually be true, right?
No.
So more people were actually killed at the Chaz Chop than.
But also,
yeah.
But those are people who are conservative, and those are people that's not CNN saying that. There's no Washington Post guide, everything you need to know about Black Lives Matter, And it's like, well, there were just a bunch of misogynist harassers who hate women and want to drive them out of the industry. Nobody said that about Black Lives Matter. Where's the Washington Post article saying that about them,
Oh,
right?
and nobody that the mainstream media trusts is what you're trying to say.
Nobody within the mainstream media was saying that. For the most part, basically, right? That wasn't the mainstream narrative. That wasn't the mainstream narrative from the media on BLM.
But it is the new media narrative, and this is we're circling back in a really great way in that this is sort of the old media position on BLM is very much, defending it as and everything connected to it, because this point in time, this is what happened. And like the Seattle police walked out of the East precinct. They had a blue flu and walked out, and this is a part of the historical fact that is often left on the cutting room floor. And everything that followed was both credited to and blamed on Black Lives Matter and the autonomous zone. And I think that I can't say that is completely innocent. I can say that because the Seattle police vacated that building, that they're partly responsible. That was an action that led to this, as well as Internet Aristocrat making a video led to another thing, led to Zoe Quinn being a target. And it's inescapable, whether he intended to or not. It's a historical fact.
Well, I don't. So I do want to say though, real quick, because I'm probably going to get farmed on this shit. I do, and plus I think it's important to say because it's true. The YouTube new media people, they really do need to disclose their shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit, I'm charitable and try to be understanding, because the fact is, like, they're not used to operating in that way. But if you're performing an act of journalism and interviewing somebody, probably does meet that bill. Now, if you're just hanging out with your friend and your friend loaned you $20 and you're playing Call of Duty together on stream, like, that's probably fine. I don't know if that needs to be disclosed. But if that same friend, you're reviewing their game or something, or you're interviewing them about a book that they're working on, and you have like some sort of connection there, that should be disclosed.
Well, as Lynn Walsh said, that the SP, there are no officiations for journalists. Anyone can call themselves a journalist, and if you want to call yourself a journalist, then you have to meet some kind of ethical standards of what we consider to be good, honest journalism. Now, I don't think any of us here call ourselves journalists, do we?
Well, I mean, I've probably said that before, but like, I don't think journalism is like a thing like that. I think that journalism is an action that you engage in. It's a verb.
Yeah,
I think that
well,
I think any individual can perform an act of journalism, whether or not they like work for the New York Times or not.
yeah, but
That's how the SPJ defines it, I believe, too, as an action.
Yeah, though, if we are saying what we do is an act of journalism, then there are certain ethical standards that we must meet. Now, I do not consider myself a journalist. I do not consider my film an act of journalism. I consider it an act of documentary filmmaking, though I do try to maintain some standards of accuracy. And let me clue you guys in on a little something, and everybody listening to it. There is no standard of accuracy you need to adhere to if you want to call your film a documentary. There are documentaries where people just outright lie for dramatic effect, but their films are still considered documentary. There are documentaries where the events depicted are reenacted. There are documentaries where the events depicted are animated. but that is fine if they're not, if they're saying that this is an act of documentary filmmaking. But if they want to consider it an act of journalism, then there are standards they have to meet.
Well, Karl, I do want to ask too, because you maybe don't want to get dragged too much into this, but one last thing about the anti-GamerGate people. It's just like I know too much information about them now. You know, it's just and like the fact is, like the reason I brought up the Stardust interview in particular is that she wanted to focus like the entire conversation almost on harassment. And like not talk about any of the GamerGate stuff. Um, except very tangentially, very lightly. And I'm sure other people who interview me are probably going to want to have that be the focus too. And like, what am I supposed to say when they're like, "Well, Brianna Wu fled her home," and I know that there's very serious questions about that actually. Like, it looks unhinged for me to be like, "Well, actually, if you look at the archives right here, here, that's probably not true." Like, it looks unhinged, but like it's actually true. Like the evidence is all real. But like, I don't want to be talking about Brianna Wu fleeing her home, right? I want to be talking about GamerGate.
Well, you can't not talk about it. Okay, so I have spent the last 6 years developing my own ability to advocate for nuclear energy. I've spoken at Thorium Energy Alliance conference twice. I've been trained by Generation Atomic. I've been collaborating with North American Young Generation in Nuclear, and there are things in the past from nuclear energy that you can't ignore, you can't not talk about, or you literally lose credibility with anyone you're trying to persuade. Right? So I can't say, hey, we need this to save the planet, we need to solve climate change, and you just ignore Fukushima and Chernobyl. And this is especially pertinent on the left because they soy the fuck out of Fukushima and radiation and, polluting the planet with uranium and all that. And so it is a function of being an advocate that you have to find a way to talk about the worst parts of that thing you're trying to persuade people around. And so acknowledging that, okay, there's maybe here's the line, here's the narrative. There's a boiling consumer revolt happening in the 2010s. And a lot of people in the media are playing defense for corruption. They're playing defense for exploiting consumers, and they're playing defense for all the bad stuff that's happening. Other people are really happy to ride that escalator, and there's that animation that's in Airplay Part 2 where one of the targets is on that conveyor belt. It's more like an escalator where some of us are climbing the ladder. Others are happy to ride that escalator, gaining friendships that, like, I have a few friendships, and I actually am pretty well connected locally because the scene is so awesome and welcoming, and I have a great resume, and so they're happy to know me as a person to know. But I know that if I had an opportunistic, identity, an identity opportunism to deploy, and I'm not super careful about that, then that's something that could happen. And so they're happy to ride that escalator and squeeze everything they can out of this opportunity at the same time that this corrupt media organization, corrupt, big AAA studio organization is hurting the consumer. And so they're ignoring all of that harm and gaining personal benefit at the same time. And the result is that some kind of bad people got a hold of the narrative, and they made it into the biggest ideological war that steamrolled over every other concern. That's how I separate, in my mind, okay, there's a legitimate consumer revolt, and there's a little bit of, petty corruption that a few people hit on, but it doesn't need to be married to anti-feminism, let's say. It is, a few bad apples and a legitimate consumer revolt. That's the best case that I see for Gamergate.
Hi, thanks for sharing that. I do want to. There's this whole aspect too, and you kind of touch upon it a little bit. And I'm sure Raymond probably has a lot of thoughts on this too. But you're a pretty smart guy, Karl. I think you probably might have thoughts on this too. There seems to be, and I'm noticing this more, maybe because I'm getting older, or I'm getting better at interviewing people. I don't know, or maybe I'm getting worse. Who knows? But like one thing that seems to be true is that people have different personality types. Which, like, yeah, no shit, dumbass. But like, but like, no, they really, 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 really do. And how they approach topics. Like some people are like, see, this conversation I think is kind of interesting because it's much more relaxed. It's not like the tense setting of being in the interview situation. So I'm not as like I don't feel the need to be like super like anal about everything right now in this moment. But like I'm more of a person who's a specific facts kind of person, right? A specific evidence. Like I want specific claims and I want like the dates and the times and the names of the people involved and then I'll make a determination. And then there's like other people like I guess like Ninetales. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I've told her this to her face too. But like Ninetales like is not a specific claims person. You've talked with her, I'm sure you know. She's a very broad, how can I fit this into like a broad narrative that I think is going to be like compelling and convincing to people when I talk about it. And like the specifics don't really matter as much. And there's like people with like both different types of personalities.
You're getting Myers-Briggs on me.
But like I'm not a psychologist. I don't know about this shit really.
I know.
But like
it's great. And what Myers-Briggs does is it gives us communication values that our own expressions. And so like yes, I was INTJ at one point. Like I was very, very J heavy, very plus J on my Myers-Briggs at one point, and I'm changing my communication, my perception preferences with time. And so yeah, it's different. And it's like sort of a function of whether you're looking at this historically or if you're trying to suss out everyone's motives and who's right, who's wrong. Those are the two perspectives. And I'm trying to show you the tools that you might reconsider how you're making a contextualizing this project to make it a better historic record.
And I've sought your feedback I think several times throughout, and I appreciate that. And so here's also a problem I've run into. Like I went into this really I think like almost as unbiased as I possibly could be, even though I was upfront that I used to be part of a GamerGate, and but like I actually did I think go into this like super like the truth probably is in the middle, right? I know the pro GG side, I don't know the anti side as well. Like there probably were like tons of people who were sending like death threats to Brianna Wu or whatever. And like obviously I don't support that. And like so like I want to be empathetic and understand from Brianna's perspective or Zoe's perspective or whatever, right? Like that was like really much how I was approaching it. And I still like try to approach it that way. But like over time because of the receipts I've seen, I've been like, well, fuck. Like, I actually wouldn't at all be surprised. Like, cause like, I'm not sure if you knew this about Brianna Wu. Well, you're friends with her, right? So maybe I shouldn't say because I don't want to like hurt your friendship.
I'm not friend. So I've had professional connections, and I know people who are very tight with her, but I'm not going to comment on anything about that.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Well, basically, she started her whole involvement with the GamerGate shit by trolling people for about a month and pretending to be pro GamerGate with sock puppet accounts. Like that was her.
Yeah.
She was using sock puppets to troll people. That was her involvement with the GamerGate shit.
And
she admits to it.
And
you've
interviewed, and you've interviewed third-party trolls. So it was like, this was a third-party troll who, you know, and let's be honest. I'm from that something awful generation of the internet where we love chaos and we're quick to judge. Probably at that point in lives, I'm maybe a little younger than Brianna, but we're quick to judge and quick to look for retribution and punishment. And yeah, it certainly seems like that was her objective at the point. And she has a perspective that means she's not accepting of the motives behind Adam Baldwin, internet aristocrat, and all the people attacking her cadre of friends in the games industry. And this is like, you know,
well, she wasn't really in their inner circle. I don't think they didn't like her very much. Like Zoe Quinn's community, okay. I don't think that they were huge fans of her. In the con leaks, they even go, well, she wasn't even in that. She wasn't in their group chat, and they even talk about how they needed to like chide her a little bit. Catherine Cross wanted to chide Brianna because Brianna was made a mod of Gamer Ghazi, and they thought that was a bad look.
Mm-hmm.
And Ghazi also had some problems with her later on because she's pro-capitalism, and a lot of the people there aren't. Well, so I don't feel like she was like she wasn't like in their inner circle or anything. I don't think.
I don't know. Like, so there's specific, you know, there's different circles, but indie game development especially, and both of these women were independent game developers, and even if they weren't in each other's circles, they have that same tribe. And so we are smaller game developers. We're up against these behemoths who are making, you know, huge products. And like, you know, I could even imagine a scenario where the destruction of that one, I forget the name. What's the name of the game jam? That
Polaris game jam?
Yeah, the Polaris. So like the destruction of the Polaris game jam. Oh man, that's practice. We're busting up the AAAs and we're having such a great time with it. And you know, you can almost imagine that there's something virtuous about that from an anti-capitalist perspective or from a pro-independent developer perspective. But yeah, it definitely looks bad on second reflection.
That is like super charitable reading, and I think that's probably like that's like not too far off, right? It's, hey, look, we're gonna have some fun, we're gonna fuck with this game jam, and but that's funded by big corporations, basically, right? It's funded by the big corporations, but like at the same time, they fucked over Maddie Lessig. Like, this is a real human being whose conscious experience is worse, and who's like
he's privileged. You forgot
he lost his job. I mean, he lost his job. Like it's like he's white, and like I don't know if he was wealthy or not. I have no idea, but like he had this whole project he wanted to do, and he lost his job over it, and he couldn't do the project, and like it doesn't seem like his career has gone many great places since that failed.
Yeah,
I want to interview him, by the way.
Yeah, and different people like it looks like Phil Fish survived in terms of a AAA contributor. He found a nice place to land after getting hacked and having his business basically destroyed. And I know you don't like to say this is part of Gamergate specifically, but it's within the area of effect of the whole social movement. You know, the something awful, 4chan, etc., gamer, internet, social movement. Whenever that started, this is in that area of effect, and so it's good to see that he survived, and it's terrible to see that the Polaris folks probably didn't do so well.
Yeah. And I got, I don't have any ill will towards anybody. Matty Lishig, Phil Fish, whatever, I think Phil Fish is kind of a dick, but like that obviously he shouldn't be hacked,
And
or anything like
anyone
that.
anyone who accomplished a lot, and from my experience in the games industry, it took exceptional personal integrity and brilliance to accomplish something and not be a dick. And I will give you an example from my own history. I was a dick and I didn't know it. I worked at Blizzard in literally the best time to work at Blizzard. I did not work in Irvine. I worked in Austin. And after Blizzard acquired there's an esports media and mobile studio from San Francisco that they acquired. I'm sorry, I forget the name. And they felt that they were the best at mobile stuff, and they should be working on all these mobile projects. And I had just come off of, doing payment systems for Hearthstone and Diablo 3. And I was being, my giant team that was made to support that was being divided up into different other units, and some of these units needed projects. And so the studio head for BattleNet in Austin was talking to me about different ideas, and I was like, yeah, I have these interests, and I kind of have inspirations about how Blizzard is going to adapt to mobile things. And so she was like, yes, we're going to do this. And she's like a really influential person in BattleNet and ran it up the flagpole, and everyone said yes. And then the San Francisco office got involved, and they were pissed, and they, raised hell in several meetings. And so we had to, and so for me, it's like, oh yeah, I want this project. And it looks like I had my friend, my advocate, the super senior producer in my office, run it up and get it pushed through. And that looks like I'm kind of a dick. Did I do that intentionally? Am I like giving you the snow job and saying, hey, I'm totally innocent. I'm like unable to predict what could have happened because it's what I wanted to do. And so there's probably a bunch of different perspectives that you will have on anyone who's successful in the games industry. They could be the worst person on the planet. They could just be a bumbling sort of introvert creative type who's doing the best they can.
But some people, I mean, like there's a lot of incentives, right, that go in different directions, especially when you're trying to like be successful and professional in your career and you have money and status tied in with all this.
Is it possible that Zoe was shitposting about Polaris and kind of felt a little more righteous towards the end of it? Look at how these idiots are running this thing. I'm going to do it myself. I think I can do it myself because this is so poorly run. Why don't I do it? And that's probably closer to the truth than the idea that it was intentionally sabotaged in order to create her own game jam.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think Raymond. I don't think you say that she did it specifically, right? To make her own, but
kind of.
No, that's the claim that Internet Aristocrat makes. And from the look of the evidence, how she put up the Rebel Game Jam site on the very day that the articles ran, and how she has not. And the thing is, whether or not she was intentionally going to do it or intentionally trying to ruin it or intentionally trying to, or she was going to do the game jam. She still hasn't done the game jam. I mean, John Tron was a part of Polaris Game Jam 2, and in the time between then and now, he has done a game jam, which you can see on his own YouTube channel.
Yeah,
So I can't imagine that it takes much to do a game
I don't know
jam.
what all goes into it, but like
it's okay. I'll tell you that I've been spectator to and involved with a number of different game jams. Finding the venue is extremely difficult. Organizing it, making a place for everyone to be there, deciding if it's going to be in person over. I mean, this was before COVID, so of course, in person and overnight stays is itself its own challenge. It there's a lot of work. I literally know someone who left his job to become the head of Global Game Jam, and so I've seen all the work that he puts into it.
Oh wow,
but
that's so interesting.
That's the most successful game jam that I can think of is Global Game Jam. So yeah, it's being a director to that project. That's an incredible amount of work. If you think you can do it, you might have a touch of hubris, like another person we're talking about here, and think you can pull it off.
Yeah, but I do want to ask though. Gosh, do you know my buddy Adam Moore?
That's familiar.
He works with the Global Game Jam. He's one of their regional organizers.
I literally know the people in Seattle who you work for, but okay. I'm not gonna. This isn't part of our.
Well, he's
a
YouTuber too, but I just
okay.
But he's also with the IGDA.
Right.
But I was gonna make a snarky comment because he recently did some really shady stuff with me actually that he shouldn't have done.
Oop.
Yeah, but, in the same amount of time that she took money for Rebel Game Jam, she also promoted a Kickstarter for another indie video game that she took she raised $80,000 for this indie video game based on the work of Truck Tingle, and she's never delivered on that. So I would not put it above. So this woman has a history of doing incredibly shady things. That she has a history of lying, cheating, fraud, and abuse. And that's just what we know that she has done. She has made statements to people that have been, like, we know that you're Tachyon, that you're going to be interviewing Mallory Marshall soon, and this is just.
Well, she doesn't go by Mallory anymore. She goes by Cole. That's her real name.
Okay, yeah, and simply by just what we know, can see what she has done, and I've said this before on Tachyon's interview. Now, this is my personal opinion, so I could fully indemnify myself. That this is my personal opinion that I think she is just a sociopath. She knows what she's doing. I think that she knows what she's doing is wrong, and she's doing all these things. She just doesn't care. That all she cares about is where she's going to get her next leg up, where she's going to get her next meal, how she's going to get money from this. And she has left literally a trail of bodies in her wake.
Okay, here's my charitable rewording. she's a terrible contractor, and everything that we're talking about, saying that, oh, that makes her a psychopath, that's just giving her more sympathy that makes it easier for her to get her next handout and bad contracting job.
But it
How-
seems like, so I'll back up
How
for
is
Raymond, because
that different?
I do want to, I know, I understand you
It's
want to be
not.
charitable.
It's not, but for every Zoe Quinn, there's 50 dudes out there doing the same thing.
Here's no, look, I don't support anybody being unethical, but like I just want to say it seems like the reason, and this is why it's like I think it is important to talk about the anti-Gamergate people. And I'm not saying that every anti-Gamergate person's like this. Obviously not. I don't even think Anita's like this. I don't even think Brianna's like this. But like Zoe Quinn, I think that there's at this point very clear like an established pattern of behavior where she seems to fuck over other human beings on a regular basis over and over and over again and doesn't seem to give a shit about them or their conscious experience.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I think that that's bad. And I think that the fact that she's like the main person who's like making all these claims about Gamergate being a harassment campaign, I think that kind of does cast some doubt on those claims. And she made very similar claims about other people too. She made claims about the Wizard Chan community, and they denied that. I don't know. Did they harass her? I don't know. But like the Escapist walked back to the article where they wrote about it and said that they didn't have evidence that the Wizard Chan community engaged in harassment. And she didn't provide harassment evidence at the time. She posted screenshots of like 2 or 3 posts on their forum that were like pretty mildly criticizing the game. And it's like this doesn't seem to be harassment.
I would be willing to extend an amount of charity to Brianna Wu. I think even though there are things that she has claimed that we have found contradicting evidence for, I'm willing to extend an amount of charity to Anita Sarkeesian, even though there are things that she has claimed that we have found contradictory evidence for. I'm not willing to extend that charity to Zoe Quinn.
And look, it's like the fact is, like, too, like, look, it's the internet, man. Everybody gets fucking mean messages. I have no doubt that all 3 of those people received mean messages, and I know that Pterodex and Avius definitely sent mean messages. Pterodex even tweeted a picture of a gun, which could be perceived as being a death threat, at Brianna Wu, right?
Yeah.
And Pterodex also bribed people with Super Smash Brothers DLC codes if they sent death threats to Zoe Quinn, and she retweeted him and said, "Go get your free games, guys." So she probably received some harassing messages for that. If nothing, and like, plus Anita Sarkeesian, she did have a list of 150 people who sent her mean messages, some of which probably were harassment, though it wasn't Gamergate people doing it.
Yeah, it can be clear, it can be confirmed that these people did receive harassment of some kind. But was it to the level of harassment that anybody else who puts themselves out there gets? Was it to the level of harassment that some of the Gamergate people got? Like, there was, like, say, Liana Kersner. Well, she doesn't consider herself Gamergate.
She's neutral.
One person that I asked if they want to. I don't know if I should say their name, but they are presented in the documentary with some of the messages they
I know
got.
who you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. They didn't respond to me, and I'm pretty that's pretty reasonable. That I think that's reasonable for them not to. Did you get in contact with them?
I talked to them during GG, but we've not really talked since.
Yeah. Though yeah.
I don't think that they're too interested in talking about this part of their life anymore.
Yeah, don't blame them. Yeah, and so yeah, and part of the topic under discussion, part of what makes this issue relevant is the proportionality. Were the threats made against Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, and Brianna Wu so massive that they needed this wall-to-wall media coverage with just I could show you a list of the dozens and dozens of media stories that covered the harassment against these three and completely blamed it on these Gamergate trolls and misogynists, while all of the harassment that was directed at Gamergate against the people who inside Gamergate received pretty much nothing. I think Eric Kane at Forbes, and that was pretty much it. Eric Kane at Forbes, I think Andrew Sullivan did a piece, David Auerbach,
Yeah,
maybe.
I want to talk about this too, because I think that, look, I don't look if Zoe Quinn or Anita Sarkeesian or whoever wants to say, look, guys, I'm receiving some internet harassment. I think it's awful. I think part of it's because I have opinions that they don't like. And I think that she could even say fuck it. She could even say like fucking like gamer. She thinks that like aspects of toxic masculine gamer culture are behind the threats. Like she could even say shit like that. I'm totally chill with that. Whatever. But like when you say like GamerGate is a harassment campaign against me, or like GamerGate is terrorism, which is what Brianna Wu said on ABC News, like I think that that's like a whole different kind of claim. Like
Yeah.
that's all because you're accusing a specific group of people, and like when you are in that group of specific people, and it doesn't seem to be true for you and the vast majority of people that who seem to be involved in this thing, it does seem like you're getting fucked over pretty hard.
That
Yeah.
so okay. Let me take a different shot at this. If you go, let's say you go to church, and you're a true believer, you think it's great. There are awful people at your church, and it gets a reputation. Are they attacking you? Are they attacking your church? Or are they attacking the awful people in that? And do you stay because do you stay to try and push out the awful people, or do you stay to make it a better place? Because if you give up, if you sort of leave this movement, or you're offended that people identify the bad actors in your movement, you're more reactive, you're more focused on the negative than the positive. And so it's like, being ex-Christian, or having that as a bit of advice that was given to me, I have learned to apply it to all sorts of different banners and movements that I've seen. So yeah, you can't be too reactive to if you feel that your movement is just and great, you should focus on those just and great things rather than the ideological warfare built around the identity that you've given yourself, the banner, the flag, the football team that you've identified with.
No, I understand. Though I don't think so. Here's like maybe this is why the pro and anti people disagree with each other. Like if you were involved with Gamergate, it didn't seem like there were really that many bad actors. And like when people say bad actors, because I condemned some people at the time. Like the things I was condemning people for in the cases where I did it, like it's not like, oh my god, they called a bomb threat into Anita Sarkeesian's college, right? I'm not condemning somebody for that because like we have no evidence. I can't find in my historical search of this. I've not found a single Gamergate supporter who called like a death threat or bomb threat into anything, even like on Twitter. Like that's kind of a problem, right? Like the things that I was condemning people for during GG was like a couple of the people tried to get Allison Rapp fired. That wasn't like a specific GamerGate thing, only because the vast majority of GG people actually spoke out against this, including Kotaku in Action, with like over 1,300 people there, and Aaron Joni actually strangely said, "Go condemn this. I don't support this at all," and I condemned it too. I made videos at the time critiquing it. Only 14 people tried to get her fired, and 5 of those people were part of a spin-off group at that point that didn't even wasn't like core GamerGate at all. And it was also, there were some anti-GamerGate people supporting one anti-GamerGate person also supported the campaign to get her fired, and a bunch of normies who didn't know about GG at all. But like I condemned them trying to get Allison Rapp fired, and like I considered that to be like, oh my god, we got to stop the bad actors in GamerGate. But like that's not even like remotely on the same level of like what we're talking about when it comes to like the I had to flee my home and there's bomb threats calling into the university. Like we don't know that those bomb threats were caused by GamerGate people. We really don't. I don't think we should just assume that they're guilty.
Yeah. It's trial by media.
I'm sort of searching back through my history. There's like a few people who
Roguestar might have actually harassed people. Roguestar might have.
Yeah.
but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but like way back in the day, like I was a little minor Twitter person at the time, like probably less than 200 followers, and I had like at least one big target, big account quote tweet me over being slightly mean to them, and I had a few nasty mentions, but it's it's part of being on the internet. So it's nothing that that really affected me, but I've been on the internet for more decades than many people have been alive.
And I don't want to sound, because like it's this, having lived through it and like been a supporter, it's like, well, what kind of evidence would change your mind? And I think there actually is like evidence that could change my mind on this, strangely, but I think the bar is so high. It's pretty high. I think it like probably should be pretty high. But like, if it turns out like that the majority of people involved in GamerGate were engaging in harassment, like actual, then I think I would.
It doesn't. What I've tried to sort of walk you through is that I don't think it matters. What probably actually matters is, was there a system of coordination behind the formation of GamerGate? Like were Aaron Gonji and the people from the Burgers and Fries IRC channel and all of the content creators that they pushed their narrative on somehow responsible for buying into this as a movement, or as a a systematic thing to fight against?
I don't
Well,
hang on. I actually know a lot about this topic.
Yeah.
I don't think that people were. I don't think it was a coordinated thing. If you even talk to the people involved, they didn't think of this as a movement. They thought, "Hey, look, there's this controversy. I want to talk about it." And then they did talk about it, and they hit people with a huge number of different interests.
From the content creators.
No, but not just the content creators. Like, I've interviewed the Burgers and Fries IRC chat room, the owner of that chat room. I've interviewed a huge number of people. And people had so many different competing interests, and like a lot of those interests were like genuine, like good things, like wanting to oppose corruption, and like other people, they care about drama, and this was some juicy shit they want to cover for their channel, like whatever. Like,
right.
There's people with different competing interests.
It was a happening, and from the the something awful in 4chan tradition is, you're gonna do it for the lulz. You see an opportunity to make something big happen, like like destroy a giant base in EVE Online, and you work to make that happen, and people gnash their teeth and they cry and they get really upsetty spaghetti about it. But you did that thing, and that's this is the Goon Squad mantra is you're making something happen, and that makes life interesting. And then we saw Project Chanology's Church of Scientology and all that, and that was a bigger in-person happening. It was it was beyond don't mess with football. It was a not just a happening that made people laugh or point or take note. It was that plus a righteous mission. And being involved in stuff like that, being aware of stuff like that, and all the anonymous hacking group stuff that followed, I sort of worry that you're not giving due credit to these internet boards, the message boards, the image boards, and how they work so intently to organize behind the scenes on things like this. Like you've read the Burgers and Fries chat logs, now knowing the mindset behind, yeah, this is lulz, we're gonna make this happen. Can you honestly say there's
a
no
whole host. Go ahead. Sorry.
There's no chance of coordination?
Well, I mean, people are courting because it's the internet, right? Like, I don't think it's like some nefarious thing. I don't think it's bad if people on different internet forums and chat rooms and online communities like want to come together and discuss specific things or make even specific things happen or like respond to events or talk about events or make videos about events. Like, I don't think that's nefarious. Like it could be like if there's like some mega corporation or like some foreign government, right, that's trying to like do it for nefarious purposes. But like if it's just a bunch of people on the internet, like I don't care. I don't think that's bad. I don't think it's like evil. I think that that's sort of like natural human interaction, like how things go.
Well, I've only done cursory research into the Burgers and Fries chat logs that I've saw the We Hunted them. From what I've seen the We Hunted the Mammoth article about it, which is pretty much the thing that all anti-Gamergate people point to when they want to say that it was a harassment campaign from the beginning. From what I've seen, the article quotes the most damning quotes, but when I looked into the body of the actual text of the transcripts, the quotes are not there, along with what appear to be huge chunks from the chat logs, huge gaps in the chat logs. I don't know. I haven't listened to your interview with.
Yeah, I've not read through of recent because the fact is, like, they logged this shit for years. And the Burgers and Fries chat room still exists, by the way. Oh. Like they might still be logging it. I don't know. It's like 12 people in there.
I've got the
but like, I've gone through the worst receipts.
Yeah.
Pinko Merchant, and I went through some of the worst receipts, and like it's even like the worst stuff is like, well, who cares? It's like a pretty mild shit, dude. Like this guy on a chat room said, what was it he said? The other gentleman, was the username. He talked about, what if, so someone said, well, with all this stuff happening and all this drama, what if Zoe kills herself? That'd be awful. And he says, well, then we get to remember, then we control hashtag remember Zoe. It's like, that's like the worst thing. It's like, I feel like that's like, one, is it kind of an edgy, inappropriate joke? Yes. But like, I don't think this is like the end of the world that some guy in an IRC chat room typed this out.
Yeah. Well, it's
and there was some conversation about one of the quotes that I saw was like, we're gonna leave like the discussion of ethics to the V board, leave the discussion of Zoe of the whatever to the burgers and fries, and leave the harassment to the Baphomet board or something like that. But I couldn't find it in the main body of the IRC chat logs.
Well, sorry,
Yeah,
Karl, you got
I've
cut
got.
off earlier. What were you saying?
Oh no, it's
Yeah.
fine. I've got the segment from August 18 to September 6 from the Internet Archive.
Well, I can actually. Or is it the full archive? Because I've
I
got.
don't. I know it's not. It's only the it's only like the 3-week panel.
Okay, let me. I think I've got it. I haven't downloaded it on my hard drive or anything, but here it's from Thoughtful Salt, if you know him. He's sort of an amateur historian on the GG stuff too. He's got like he just recently released a massive file dump of like 83 gigabytes of data on GG.
Wow.
And it's in there. So let me see if
I
I
don't.
can. Here, I'll link you in the. Or he posted it publicly, so it's fine.
Yeah. I don't know that I'm gonna download gigabytes. Oh my god.
Yeah. So, but in here you'll see he also has the chat logs too for I don't know how long they go for.
Mm-hmm.
It's still requesting folder data for me.
No, that's fine. I'll have to take a look at it. If I, if I really care to prosecute this, I could go into it. I don't know that it's more useful at this point, because you can go from just that few week period, and like I literally joined this chat at one point. I think maybe I'm.
Oh, you're probably in the logs. Oh my god, we could probably find you. Holy shit, that'd be funny. Okay, so I've got.
I might have had a randomized name. I'm not sure. No, I used. Of course, my anon name was totally different, because I am aware of OPSEC. Yeah, I don't see
I got
myself in here.
August 19th. Oh, you're. I was able to pull it up to August 19th. I see. He didn't sort these always the world's greatest way, but it's also like his personal stuff that he released publicly because he thought it'd be useful information for historians and stuff. So
Yeah, I've only got like a few hours before that. Then from there's the archive.org starts at August 18th, 5:20 p.m.
okay. Is 19th when this starts? I can't tell because fries.
Let's see what the first thing on the 19th is. Hey, we can fingerprint these people by their time zone, right? No. Oh, that was 5 a.m.? Holy shit. Really? No. No, it's just really busy from 5 p.m. to midnight. August 19th, midnight. The first person is Verdigris. That was the first post after midnight. And there was a topic change right before midnight. But anyways, yeah, I don't see the stuff you're trying to talk about, Ray. But having gone through this at one point, it felt like the same pattern that I was fairly familiar with, and this is of course relying on my previous experience on the image boards. So there's that. yeah, there's that whole thing. And oh, here's one. It's even like right after midnight, Burger King _ says it would be too late for her to deck out on PAX. Just like literally referring to Zoe being targeted at an IRL event and, you know, being confronted by this whole drama.
Was this
so I don't know.
which one of these is from it? Was that from the 19th, the one that starts there?
That was burgers and fries at from Burger King _ so it would be too late for her to duck out on PAX.
Which day is this though?
This is August 19th, 7 minutes after midnight.
PAX.
Yeah, PAX. There's probably a lot of hits on that.
I'm not getting any, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm not.
I have 1,000 hits from August 19th to August 22nd.
Okay, I wasn't able to search it
23rd,
on. I wasn't able to search it on my browser, but I could search it through here.
Yeah, PAX.
Oh, I think actually Thydrin talked about this actually.
Yeah, here's August 23rd. Someone says, Repzion, look what he's doing. He's going to Zoe's panel at PAX. This was the panel that I was working. Does
yeah,
he know that she got removed from her panel? She won't be there now.
Who, Repzion?
Yeah, that REPZION.
Yeah, I know him. He's a YouTuber.
Yeah. Yeah, it links a YouTube stream.
I don't think that's a problem.
Or a comment.
He's allowed to go to. Though
of course, this is allowed.
Mundane Matt though.
The question is,
I think he might have crossed
the question
line
is this coordination or is this not coordination?
Well, I don't think. I don't think it's a problem if Mr. Repzion's not going to harass her. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, the FBI actually investigated Mr. Repzion, and they didn't think he's going to harass anybody. It's in the FBI report, and he also talked about it, made a video about it.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that that's like a threat. Mr. Repzion is someone who covered the situation, thought it was funny, and wanted to go to the panel and see what it was like. Though Mundane Matt later, apparently, Mundane Matt.
Josh _ asks, should I tell Matt and IA about this? So yeah, this is Burgers and Fries feeding content to content creators.
But nobody disagrees with that. Like
okay, because
that's not a contested claim.
You're unsure that this is coordination.
What do you mean? I think it's fine. I think that the YouTubers actually, some of them were in the chat room.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything illegal in here.
No, it's definitely, as far as I can tell, it's not illegal, or the FBI would have done something about it. The question is, is how are we going to contextualize?
Apparently, Mr. Repzion's not allowed to go to PAX panels if Zoe Quinn's there.
Oh, did she file an order?
No, but like it seems like
barred?
it seems like that's like what you're trying to want people to take away. Like, oh well.
No. This is not like in the realm of policy. This is in the realm of looking back historically, and I say, well, who is responsible for this kind of group behavior? And you're saying, well, anyone can do what they want, and I say, okay, but is there coordination behind the scenes? Because I remember being an image board poster, being a Something Awful reader. This is part of the pattern of making something happen.
Yeah, again, I don't see this as like an evil thing.
Okay.
I just don't see.
Hey,
I don't see what the crime is.
And from what I said, because it's a happening, it's a lulzy happening, and it has a virtuous cause behind it, just like Project Chinology. That's the motivation. That's what gets people's juices going, because it's so exciting. And so yeah, it's like if you want to say, oh, that's fine, it's all legal, it's all great. You have to talk about it when you're talking about Gamergate.
No,
And if you don't,
what do you mean?
I
literally
like
interviewed Hydrant, and he talked about this specific incident in the
okay. But
interview.
if you don't address it and you expect people to buy into what you're selling, it's like I'm ignoring Chernobyl.
Well, there's no, but like here's the thing. Like, where is the evidence of this even being a harassment campaign? Like, okay, so you got a couple of YouTubers who went to PAX and they were going to go to Zoe Quinn's panel, and people are talking about it in a chat room. Nobody's saying like, "Oh, go get that bitch, go get that whore in here." And like, this is an IRC chat room. Like, I'm kind of be expecting like even worse stuff actually. Though Thydrin says that he thinks Mundane Matt crossed the line. He says that in his interview. Mundane Matt wanted people to cosplay as Burgers and Fries employees because he thought it would be a funny joke. But he says that he got shot down pretty hard on this because people were like, no, that's going to cross the line. That's going to be actual harassment.
If like 30 plus people show up to protest, I'll be so proud. Dark Hero at August 23rd, 3:35 a.m.
Yeah, I think. Well, again, I don't really have a problem with that. Though I don't think people. I personally wouldn't support protesting a Zoe Quinn panel. It depends on the context. Not here though, because like Zoe Quinn like didn't specifically like fuck anything up in this particular situation. Like she's a shitty person. But like
Right.
I wouldn't protest Zoe. Like it depends. Like if Zoe Quinn came to St. Louis, was gonna make like a GamerGate 10-year anniversary speech about how they're all a bunch of evil misogynists who hate women, then like I might like be okay with like protesting that, because those claims aren't true. But like I'm not gonna like protest her because Grayson's really the one who fucked this up more. But but like whatever, they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, and you know what? If it's your project,
and they didn't even do it actually. No one even actually did anything. There's like one guy in a chat room said that.
Yeah.
But like, so what do you think? What do you think is like so bad that it's like, holy shit, this is like earth shattering. This should be change the way you think about all of this.
I don't think it's earth shattering. I think it's like you've sold me the you've sold me the idea that it's all virtuous.
I never said it was all virtuous. Wait, when have I ever said that?
Right.
I've even expressly said that I think
you wanted my advice how you're going to address the anti-GG perspective, and it's by omission. Like I'm saying, it's by omission. It's as if I'm saying we need nuclear. Chernobyl didn't happen, or don't forget about Chernobyl. It's not part of. It's not real. It's not part of it. It's and the best defense you're going to have is to acknowledge, look at these shithead kids in an IRC room trying to rile people up to go visit Zoe's panel, to try to go to PAX 2014 and carry a bunch of signs like we did back in, what was it, 2009, in front of the Scientology buildings. That's literally
no, but like also
is.
you're putting way too much into this, because like one, this chat room was actually quite small, 150 people roughly, and two,
that's big for a non-net. I've been on a non-net. That's not small. I mean, today's standards with Discord, everyone using Discord, that's a modest sized channel.
Only two. Like if you like the people who actually said for anything to do anything bad, like it seems to be like almost non-existent. Okay. And yes, I would say that it's there's a couple people there who crossed the line. I don't doubt that.
All right.
But like the idea that like all 150 of these people are like all there for the same reason, or all encouraging something bad to happen. I don't think that that's true.
That's
And
the
three,
goalposts.
no,
Kind of
no,
closing
because like,
in.
look, I run an active Discord server. You know, there's hundreds of fucking messages every week.
Right, in 2023, 2024. This
Oh,
was a
come on,
decade
dude.
ago. No, this was a
No,
decade
I
ago.
was on IRC
How
back
could
then,
you
dude.
find how many people were willing to take the leap from browsing the image board to finding irc.anonnet?
Well, no, this was on Ryzen. This was on a major network.
Oh wait, this okay.
Burgers and Fries is a Ryzen channel.
I thought this was a non-net. So
No,
okay.
no. Well, I mean, there might be like a separate channel. Well, there were. So actually, I know this because I'm like a fucking. I was obsessed with GamerGate 10 years ago. Some people would say I still am, but I don't think I am. But there were actually there were this Burgers and Fries specifically was a Ryzen, and there were a lot of other Ryzen ones too. Like Kia was on Ryzen. They had their own channel there, and like GamerGate.me, a bunch of other ones too. GamerGate was big on Ryzen, but there were also people on uh, Tektronics. There was a couple of channels there that weren't super active. There was one channel on QuakeNet that had a couple people, and then there was, I think, Freenode, I think maybe had a couple people too. Um, again, I think Ryzen was Burgers and
Okay,
Fries
yeah.
100%. You could go there right now. I'm on Ryzen right now. We can go to Burgers and Fries.
No, okay. Yeah, okay, no, I'll take that on me. I'm back in Chanology we had the AnonNet, which was the hardcore, and not easy to get to.
I mean, Ryzen's
It's
a
getting
pretty big channel. Well, it's not as big as it
Yeah,
used to because our IRC's died, not died, but it's declined over time.
right. IRC, by the way, IRC should live if you think we need independent, independent media coverage and independent networks that are not owned by Google or Amazon. That's the number one medium for community creation. You should support the Unreal IRC daemon and the advancements they're doing with the new IRC protocol.
So, by the way, I wanted to ask you too. This is maybe a controversial thing, um, but QQ brought it up in my interview with him because I kind of gave him shit over the Burgers and Fries stuff. Um, yeah, because like I don't think that calling the chat room Burgers and Fries is cool. I didn't in the beginning. I don't give a shit actually, but in the beginning I thought I'm like, come on, that is kind of sexist, Thydrin. What the fuck? And he's like, because I told him this at the time too. I'm like, you should change the name of the chat room, um, because it sounds kind of sexist. And he's like, well, no, it's a funny meme, and I don't care. And then he also said, he said too that if you look at Aaron Joni, he's actually in the chat logs. He says that it's he because Aaron, I believe, well, I don't know 100% on that, so I'm not gonna say it, but he I know he's in the chat logs. I know that he says that he supports using the meme for infidelity shaming. He's like I think that people who cheat are terrible people who betray the trust of others or whatever, right? And he says I think that infidelity shaming is okay, but slut shaming is not okay. That's what Aaron says.
well, look at people like men like Anthony Weiner and who is uh the former mayor of New York who was seeing prostitutes.
Oh, but I wasn't. My whole point about that was I was gonna say, not, the QQ. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Okay, he's a YouTuber. He's in the documentary briefly. He's a YouTuber who covered GamerGate, kind of a trickster. He's kind of he's from the old internet. Let's say that. Um, he he says that he loves burgers and fries. He loves the chat room. And he says that the world needs places like this. The world needs these IRC, not IRC specifically, but it needs the seedy dive bar where people can go and get information and do research, information you're not going to find other places. And that serves a useful function. And something whether that's something the awful community, whether that's IRC chat rooms like that, whether that's whatever it happens to be, Usenet, the world needs that seedy underbelly. Maybe Kiwi Farms even shit. Who knows, right? He didn't say that specifically about Kiwi Farms, to be clear.
It
But like,
it was
do
Elite
these
Spitzer.
do these places online, and they're all different. Like Encyclopedia Dramatica, right? Is like a good. It has like a lot of really well sourced stuff on it. Shockingly, um, and like stuff you won't find anywhere else. So like, how do we think about that? Or is the seedy dive bar a necessary function of living in a free society with information?
It's a consequence that, if you, if it's not directly harmful, it will exist. And if it is, directly harmful, then we find the people responsible for it and shut it down. Like we've got, you know, legitimate concerns about different kinds of information. Like hell, we found, there's CSM in the stable diffusion training set. So you've got to, shut that down. And it's sort of a, like I being in the industry, I know people who literally contracted for Microsoft to root out and shut down CSM on their network. And so this is
CSM being like the bad stuff with kids, right?
yes.
Oh
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's
So
illegal. Yeah, that's yeah. But I mean, like
right.
legal,
Yeah.
but people might think unsavory. That's what I mean. Like
I mean,
Kiwi
it
Farms,
is a
right? Kiwi Farms
consequence. Yeah,
doesn't
it
break the
is.
law, but Kiwi Farms, and that's an extreme example. Kiwi Farms is, but like
Yeah.
Kiwi Farms doesn't break the
It
law,
will
but
exist. And I can't like 3D printed guns. I'm not gonna soy out about it. It will exist. And there's um the alternative where, is it do I make it illegal to print a gun? Then I got, devices in my basement that the FBI is going to want to look at. Is that, sort of the reality of the illiberal future? I agree what you're relating to me.
well, I'm
But
not sure I agree 100% with that take. That's what QQ said.
hmm.
But I do
Well,
think
no,
it's an
I
interesting
don't think
question.
it's virtuous. I don't think that free speech, freedom of movement, and everything like this is in and to itself a virtue, other than it is a, um, you know, um, a net positive. The more we can accommodate freedoms, the better. But we have, things like yelling fire in a theater and CSM on the internet and all that stuff that needs to be reined in. And outside of those guardrails, we need to have a very strong justification to shut it down.
Yeah, I agree. Though the fire example's terrible. Why would you use that? You know that actual his case though, right?
Fire in a theater. I
Yeah,
mean
where they were
that's
arresting Jewish anti-war protesters during World War One, and saying that they
yep.
were equivalent to shouting fire in a crowded theater, and therefore they deprived them of their individual liberties and their right to freedom of speech. That's a true
I'll have
story.
to
Look
look
it
that up.
up. Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens has this whole great speech about it, actually. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Oh, cool. Well, hey, anything else you guys want to talk about? I had a whole other list of things, but I don't really care enough about. I mean, like, no offense, Raymond, but like we've been going a minute. We can talk about something else if you want.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the review, the preview. I do think there's a few things that, there's like that one technical issue that I noticed, and one unfortunate thing that you'll probably want to censor. Because otherwise it makes it difficult to distribute.
Oh,
Okay.
But yeah,
I don't think it was a
I'll send it
technical
private.
issue. I thought it was too. I think that was just Total Biscuit. If you look very close, I think it's
Hmm.
Total Biscuit had a super faded white avatar in the back. Because it was when Total Biscuit was talking, and I think you
Yeah.
could barely make it out. I don't think you. I think that that's just. I think that that's how Total Biscuit ran his like show, that background when he was talking. I don't think it was a technical error, because I thought
No,
so
that
too at
was
first.
that was
So it looks like a
intentional.
black screen, but if you look super close, you'll see like a faded Total Biscuit hat in the background, just very light. You can barely make it out, but it's
Along
there.
with
Okay.
1984 to 2018.
Hmm.
Anyway, thanks, Karl, for coming on. I'm glad. So let me ask you. Well, first off, I guess it's a two-parter, and then I'll let you get the fuck out of here if you want. But I didn't want to ask you too, Raymond. Actually, I'll let
Yeah.
Raymond answer first, and we can critique his answer. Okay, Raymond,
Okay.
what would
Yes.
change your mind? Well, what's your current view on GamerGate? Super short, give me like 2 sentences, and then what would change your mind on that?
It was a public revolt against a deceptive media. And to change my mind on that, you would have to show me evidence that everybody involved in Gamergate, everybody who was tweeting that tag, everybody who was posting on Kotaku in Action, were secretly collaborating in order to harass one mediocre game developer.
Though, I mean, like if there's even like one person for whom it was like legit, then the claim would be false. You'd say.
It would have to be a good majority of them.
Well, I think that's more fair. I think that's more. What do you think, Karl?
Gamergate was a hashtag made by Adam Baldwin. It was made from content created by the Internet Aristocrat, which was made from info pushed on him by the Burgers and Fries chat formed by 4chan users. I don't know that that means it's all bad. I think that, you know, whether it was from Gamergate or whether it was the latent consumer revolt that existed before Gamergate, as early as 2010, probably earlier, whenever Jeff Gerstmann was let go and founded Giant Bomb. This was a important part of our internet culture and our gamer history. You can't include things like the Mass Effect 3 reviews and Jeff Gerstmann and all of that as positive aspects of the hashtag, the movement, without acknowledging the bad. I think that there's a lot of good. There's SEC rules updates, FTC rules updates that followed in 2014 and 2015. And I think that, you know, we as gaming community grew up in this context. Even if some of us are leading the age gap and some of us are following it, it's something that, you know, you need to preserve as a reflection on our history. But you can't ascribe motives to any of it. You probably shouldn't. It's a historical point in time, and if you try to ascribe motive to it, you're going to be arguing about it forever, just like we're arguing about the Middle East today. So
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
that's not a. Go
I
ahead.
wish to change a little bit of my answer. I called Zoe Quinn a mediocre game developer. That's an insult to mediocre game developers.
Oh my gosh. See, we can't end it on a magnanimous note. We gotta. Uh, I'll let you finish your point, and then I want to say something. I gotta
Yeah,
correct
that
something
was
I
it.
said earlier too. Actually.
I'm good. Except I guess I will say, if I get blackballed, everything you said, Ray, everything you said was right. If I get blackballed,
Blackballed? Like how?
if I okay, so I'm essentially leaving the games industry. But
Yeah.
if none of those people ever want to talk to me again because I entertained this stream and sort of decided to take this in good faith and give you advice on how to recontextualize the good things, the consumer, you know, rights things that happened. If I get blackballed for doing that, you are right.
Okay.
You should tell the game jam guy. about this
Yeah.
conversation. I want to see what his reaction would be because he supports blacklisting me from the industry. Like that's how it could be read if you want to be super uncharitable, which like I think it's like a fair reading kind of. Did you see what he did? We can talk off air sometime. I'll just
Yeah. Send it to me and I'll take a look.
yeah. Anyway,
I don't know that I'll be able to say anything about it, but you know, if you can take the feedback that I've given you about how to honestly address harassment that is connected to this campaign, I think that you'll have a chance.
I ask
Okay.
everybody about the burgers and fries stuff now. I do. I ask every single person, or I try to. Obviously, some people are like, "I only got like 20 minutes left, man. Can we rush through it?" You know, and it doesn't get to it. But like for most of them, I do ask them about it. Um, and most people I think know the chat. Well, most people are aware that the chat room existed, but like they don't like know that much information about like the specifics. They haven't like read through every single log, you know, necessarily.
Oh, and before we go away, we have to mention that if you want to see the
Oh
documentary,
yeah.
the complete documentary, you have to become a $10 patron at Metalhead Films on Patreon.
Also, yes, and by the way, sorry, I'm such a dick. But thank you so much, Raymond, for coming on. Thank you, also Karl, and Karl. I want to say too. I wish that we could have had these conversations back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe the whole GamerGate thing would have been different if more people talked about it like we did.
Yeah, but I
I
think that was the central problem. Most people didn't want to talk.
I think that was the central issue too.
okay, I'll come back to say this. I think that that's giving too much credit to the moment in time following September 2014. I think that at least inside the industry, we started to have more conversations about how to better reach a more diverse set of customers and keep true to, you know, the best parts of making games fun, finding the fun, as the fabulous people at Blizzard said, um, and making sure that everything is done correctly and above board. And I think that not being able to, not being able to dismantle every bad media outlet, or being able to delete every exploitive Farmville type game off the internet, that's not the point. It's to do better, and so doing the next right thing is sort of always my mantra, and I think that fight actually started a long time ago, and Gamergate might have sped it up, and that's probably the good thing. And I would give you that speeding up progress in terms of rooting out corruption and making some things better in terms of game quality, that's a good thing.
And can I ask? I'm so sorry. We might not get a chance to talk again soon publicly about this stuff. So,
yeah.
Well, first off, my personal integrity with this shit's important to me. From what you've seen so far, am I approaching it in good faith? And do you think Raymond did too, since he obviously made a project about this? You can tell us off air. Do you want it that way? There's like no pressure.
I think you're doing the best within your narrative. Unfortunately, like I know that I had my narrative about this as well, and having, and that my attitude about it had changed over time. It's not a fully 100% righteous, defensible thing. You know, that thing that happened between the what's his name from the central figure,
Total Biscuit.
not Zoe. not Zoe.
Oh,
not
you
Phil,
mean Joni or Grayson?
No, Grayson. Yes. Yeah, I think that's probably the name that I should remember. And like, yeah, a sad, little corrupt media figure, Aaron Grayson.
Nathan Grayson, but yeah, but
Nathan,
like
sorry,
even
Nathan
like
Grayson.
we should have sympathy for him as a human though too, right? Like, look, that's just because he fucked up back in 2014 doesn't mean he can't like become a better person, right? Where's the humanity for him?
Probably, but so the humanity for him is that, hey, you were riding high, both in your social circles and in your personal success at this point, and you can't sort of ignore that, that came at a cost of your integrity. So if anyone else has, a lesson to learn, then definitely, focus on Grayson, and be better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I'll let you go, and thank you all for coming on. Thank you for watching, and go check out the documentary. It's pretty good, actually. I feel, um, and yeah, I guess we'll close her down. We'll
Thank
raid.
you.
We'll raid somebody. We'll raid who's online. Tomfoolery. All right. Actually,
Good night.
Stardust just interviewed me. I'll read her, but she does need to add disclosure. So I'll keep an eye out, see if that happens. I did